Look up at the night sky on a clear, dark evening. What do you see? A vast, glittering tapestry of stars, a silent, majestic canvas that has captivated humanity for thousands upon thousands of years. But it's more than just a beautiful spectacle. For our ancestors, this was a grand clock, a celestial map, and a divine storybook, all rolled into one. And etched into that starry expanse are 12 familiar figures, patterns we still recognize today: the zodiac signs. Whether you're a passionate Aries, a practical Taurus, or a curious Gemini, you've likely felt a personal connection to that little symbol assigned to your birthday. But have you ever stopped to wonder where it truly comes from? That story doesn't begin in a modern magazine or a smartphone app. It begins in the dust of ancient deserts, in the shadow of towering ziggurats, and in the minds of brilliant astronomers who looked to the heavens and saw not just stars, but a reflection of life itself. This is the story of the ancient origins of the zodiac, a tale that winds its way through lost civilizations and forgotten empires, a historical mystery that connects us directly to the very first people who dared to map the cosmos. The zodiac, as we know it, is one of humanity's oldest and most enduring creations, a system of thought that has survived the rise and fall of kingdoms, outlasted empires, and bridged cultures across the globe. Its beginnings are shrouded in the mists of deep time, a puzzle whose pieces are scattered across Mesopotamia, perfected in Greece, and preserved by scholars across the ages. This wasn't a single invention, but a slow, collaborative masterpiece of human observation and imagination. We're about to embark on a journey to uncover the very first moments when these star patterns were given their legendary forms: the bull, the lion, the twins. We'll meet the ancient Babylonians who meticulously charted the sun's path, the Greek philosophers who wove these constellations into their epic myths, and explore how these symbols carried profound meaning about the gods, the seasons, and the human condition. This is the real, untold history behind the horoscope you might glance at today, a legacy written in the stars long before the modern world even began to take shape. So, if you're ready to trace your astrological roots back to their astonishing source, to discover how your zodiac sign is a direct link to the dreams and discoveries of our most ancient ancestors, then you're in the right place. This journey will take us from the cradle of civilization to the libraries of Alexandria, revealing how a simple tool for tracking time transformed into a universal language of symbolism that continues to fascinate us. We're going to decode the celestial codex, piece together an archaeological mystery, and uncover the true, ancient power behind the 12 signs of the zodiac. Get ready to see the night sky and your place within it in a completely new light. To truly understand the zodiac, we first need to look up and picture its celestial stage. Imagine a great, invisible highway encircling the entire Earth, a path traced by the sun as it makes its yearly journey across the sky. This path is called the ecliptic. It's the plane of Earth's orbit around the sun, projected out against the backdrop of the stars. Now, picture a band of constellations, like a glittering set of cosmic landmarks that this highway passes directly through. This band is the zodiac. The word itself comes from the ancient Greek zodiakos kyklos, meaning circle of little animals, and for the most part, that's exactly what it is. A celestial menagerie featuring a ram, a bull, twins, a crab, a lion, and so on. The sun, the moon, and the planets all appear to wander within this relatively narrow belt because their orbits around the sun are, from our perspective on Earth, all roughly aligned on the same plane. So, as our planet moves, the sun seems to pass in front of a different constellation each month. The moon visits a new one every few days, and the planets dance through them over longer periods. This is the foundational concept our ancestors discovered millennia ago. But here is where a critical and often misunderstood split occurs, a fork in the astrological road that separates the system most Westerners know from another ancient tradition. This is the fundamental difference between the tropical zodiac and the sidereal zodiac. The tropical zodiac, which is the basis for Western astrology, is tied to the seasons. It divides the ecliptic into 12 equal 30-degree segments, starting from the exact point where the sun crosses the celestial equator, moving northward each year. The vernal equinox, the first day of spring in the northern hemisphere. This point is called the first point of Aries. The crucial thing to understand is that this system is fixed to the Earth's relationship with the sun and its seasons, not the actual star constellations behind them. Because of a slow, wobbling motion of Earth's axis known as precession, that starting point has gradually drifted backwards through the constellations over the centuries. So, while the tropical system says the sun is in Aries from late March to late April, if you were to look at the actual stars behind the sun during that period today, you would see it's actually in the constellation of Pisces. This drift is why your sun sign in Western astrology might not align with the constellation the sun was physically in on the day you were born. In contrast, the sidereal zodiac, used in Vedic or Indian astrology, stays aligned with the observable constellations. It accounts for that precessional drift, anchoring its 12 signs to the fixed star background. This is why your Vedic sun sign will often be one sign behind your Western one. So, is one system more correct than the other? That's a matter of philosophical perspective. The tropical zodiac can be seen as a map of cosmic energy based on the cyclical rhythm of our own planet's seasons, a more internal, experiential cycle. The sidereal zodiac is a map fixed to the vast, timeless canvas of the stellar universe itself, an external, observational reality. Both are sophisticated systems born from the same ancient desire to find meaning and order in the majestic clockwork of the heavens. Now, let's rewind the cosmic clock to a time long before Babylon or Greece, to the very dawn of human consciousness. Our story begins not in libraries or temples, but in the depths of dark caves and atop lonely hills, with the first humans who gazed upward in wonder and saw more than just random points of light. These earliest stargazers possessed an intuitive, profound connection to the heavens, one that was essential for their survival and central to their understanding of the world. They were the first astronomers, and their legacy is etched not in clay tablets but in stone and metal. Consider the breathtaking cave paintings of Lascaux in France, created over 17,000 years ago. Among the vivid depictions of bison, horses, and stags, archaeologists have identified a fascinating panel known as the shaft scene, which features a charging bison, a bird-topped pole, and a mysterious man with a bird's head. But look above them. There, on the cave wall, is a series of dots that some researchers believe represent the Pleiades star cluster, also known as the Seven Sisters. This shimmering group of stars has been a celestial marker for countless cultures across the globe, often signaling the changing of seasons crucial for hunting and gathering. To paint these stars deep within a sacred cave suggests they weren't just decorative. They were part of a cosmological map, a way of bringing the power and order of the heavens into the heart of their ritual world. This was humanity's first step toward creating a permanent record of the sky, an attempt to anchor their lives to the eternal rhythms above. This connection becomes even more explicit and technologically sophisticated with a remarkable artifact from a later era, the Nebra sky disk. Discovered in Germany and dated to around 1600 years before the Common Era, this bronze disk is considered the oldest known concrete depiction of the cosmos. It's a portable, metal representation of the sky. The disk is inlaid with gold symbols that clearly represent a crescent moon, a full moon or sun, and a cluster of stars widely interpreted as the Pleiades once again. But the most revolutionary feature is a graceful arc along the edge added later, which is thought to represent a solar barge, a mythological boat carrying the sun across the sky or the horizon. What makes the Nebra sky disk so extraordinary is that it appears to be a functional instrument. analysis suggests the angles between the horizon arcs could have been used to calculate the solstices, the longest and shortest days of the year. Imagine the power this object held. It wasn't just a symbolic picture, it was an ancient calendar and a complex astronomical computer, allowing its Bronze Age creators to predict the turning of the seasons with precision. This knowledge was power. It told them when to plant, when to harvest, and when to perform the rituals that kept their world in balance. The disk proves that thousands of years before classical civilization, people in the heart of Europe were making precise astronomical observations and encoding that knowledge into a physical, working model of the universe. These prehistoric efforts were driven by profound, practical necessities. Before the invention of clocks or written calendars, the sky was the most reliable timepiece available. The cyclical journey of the sun defined the day. The moon's graceful phases from slender crescent to glowing full orb and back again gave us the concept of a month. And the slow, steady march of constellations across the night sky marked the passage of the seasons, the great yearly cycle that dictated all life. For nomadic tribes, the stars were also a compass. In the northern hemisphere, the star Polaris, the North Star, remains almost perfectly fixed in the sky, an unwavering beacon around which all other stars appear to rotate. By learning the patterns around it, ancient travelers could navigate vast, featureless oceans and deserts with confidence, guided by a celestial map that never faded. From these practical observations, the first cosmologies were born. The sky became a grand storybook where the dramas of gods, ancestors, and mythical beasts played out. The rhythmic dance of celestial bodies, the sun's rebirth every morning, the moon's mysterious death and rebirth each month offered comforting narratives of death and renewal, order triumphing over chaos. This was the fertile ground from which the later, more formalized zodiac would eventually grow. The human mind, seeing familiar patterns in the random scattering of stars, began to connect the dots, drawing lions and bulls and scorpions in the sky, projecting their world, their fears, and their hopes onto the magnificent starry canvas above. This foundational structure, this celestial clockwork, needed a true home, a civilization with the patience, the precision, and the bureaucratic need to formalize the patterns of the sky. And we find that home in the fertile crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, in the bustling, intellectually vibrant world of ancient Mesopotamia. While prehistoric peoples observed the stars, it was the Babylonians who turned that observation into a rigorous mathematical science. Around the 5th century before the Common Era, in the heart of Babylonia, a profound intellectual leap occurred. Building upon a legacy of astronomical knowledge that stretched back over 1,000 years to their Sumerian predecessors, these scholar priests made a decision that would echo for millennia. They officially divided the great path of the ecliptic into 12 equal slices of sky, each precisely 30 degrees wide. This was the moment of creation for the zodiac's fundamental architecture, the very skeleton upon which all later Western astrology would be built. To understand why they did this, you have to appreciate the Babylonian mindset. This was not a culture of idle stargazing. For them, astronomy and astrology were two sides of the same coin, a single discipline dedicated to understanding the will of the gods. They were firm believers in celestial omens, the idea that the gods communicated their intentions and future events through the movements of the heavens. A lunar eclipse might foretell the death of a king. The appearance of a comet could signal an impending war. To maintain social order and ensure the king's favor with the divine, a whole class of highly trained scribes and astronomers were employed to watch the sky relentlessly, recording every planetary conjunction, every eclipse, every unusual celestial event on thousands of clay tablets. This created an enormous, centuries-long dataset of astronomical observations. It was from this deep well of accumulated data that the zodiac was born. They noticed that the sun, moon, and 5 visible planets all moved within a specific narrow band, and they identified 18 constellations along that path. But for the purpose of creating a clean, predictable calendar and a precise coordinate system for their divine predictions, they streamlined these 18 down to 12 equal divisions. This system was brilliantly practical. It created a consistent, predictable grid across the sky, allowing them to track the location of celestial bodies with mathematical accuracy. They could now say Jupiter is 10 degrees into the constellation of the Bull, with a clarity that was entirely new to the world. But where did the specific symbols come from? Many of these 12 figures were not Babylonian inventions, but rather inherited from the rich tapestry of Sumerian mythology that preceded them. The Sumerians, the brilliant innovators who founded Mesopotamian civilization, had already populated their cosmos with divine figures and mythical creatures, many of which were associated with stars. The lion, for instance, was a potent symbol of power, often associated with the goddess Inanna. The bull was a near-universal symbol of strength and fertility, linked to the great god Anu. The scorpion, a creature both dangerous and resilient, was seen as a guardian of the underworld. The Babylonian astronomers didn't just pick random animals. They codified a pre-existing cultural and mythological vocabulary, mapping the gods and monsters of their epic stories directly onto the starry canvas. The constellation we know as Gemini, the twins, likely finds its origins in the great Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, featuring the hero Gilgamesh and his wild companion Enkidu. The figure of the archer may have roots in the god Nergal, a fierce deity of war and pestilence often depicted with a bow. So the zodiac became more than just a measuring stick. It was a celestial storybook, a projection of their entire mythological world into the heavens, turning the motions of planets into the journeys of their gods. This marriage of precise mathematics and profound mythology is the Babylonians' greatest legacy to us. They gave us the framework, the 12 houses, and filled them with characters whose stories we are still telling, in one form or another, more than 2,500 years later. So what were these 12 powerful figures that the Babylonians mapped onto the heavens, and what did they mean to the people who first named them? Let's step into their world and meet the original celestial cast. For the Babylonians, these weren't just pretty star patterns. They were living embodiments of their gods, their myths, and the very rhythm of their agricultural and ritual year. Each constellation was a chapter in a divine drama playing out overhead, its appearance and position holding immense significance. Take the figure we call Gemini. In our modern Western astrology, it represents the twins Castor and Pollux from Greek mythology, but its origins are far older and much darker. To the Babylonians, this constellation was known as the Great Twins, and they were not heroes of adventure, but rather the twin gods Lugal-Gurra and Meslamtia. Their names translate to the Mighty King and the One who has come forth from the Meslam being a temple dedicated to the god Nergal in the city of Cutha. These twins were fearsome deities of the underworld, often depicted as twin doorkeepers, guardians of the gateway to the land of the dead. They were associated with war, pestilence, and the scorching heat of the midday sun, which was thought to be a manifestation of their destructive power. Seeing these twins in the night sky would have evoked a sense of awe and perhaps dread, a reminder of the ever-present powers of death and the afterlife. Their place in the zodiac likely coincided with a time of year marked by intense heat or a period of ritual significance connected to the ancestors and the underworld. This is a perfect example of how the original meanings could be profoundly different from the light-hearted, communicative energy we associate with Gemini today. The mighty lion, our Leo, was one of the most prominent and universally recognized figures. To the Babylonians, it was Gu, La, the lion. In a land where lions were both a real physical threat and a powerful symbol of royal authority, this constellation was deeply significant. It was intimately linked with the sun, as the lion's arrival in the sky often coincided with the hottest part of the summer, when the sun was at its most potent and ferocious. This period was a time of extreme heat and drought, and the lion's celestial presence mirrored the sun's overpowering, king of the beast's dominance in the natural world. The constellation was also associated with the goddess Ishtar, the powerful deity of love, war, and fertility, who was frequently depicted standing on the back of a lion. So, the lion was not just a symbol of raw power, but also of divine, regal authority and the intense, sometimes destructive, passion of the summer sun. Then there is Taurus, the bull, known as Ju, and Na, the bull of heaven. This constellation was the celestial counterpart to one of the most famous creatures in all of Mesopotamian mythology. The bull of heaven is a central figure in the epic of Gilgamesh. The goddess Ishtar, enraged by the hero Gilgamesh's rejection of her advances, demands that her father, the sky god Anu, release the bull of heaven to punish him. This divine bull is a creature of unimaginable destruction. With a single snort, it can open up chasms in the earth that swallow hundreds of people. Gilgamesh and his friend Enkidu eventually slay the bull, but this act of defiance against the god seals Enkidu's fate, leading to his death. So when the Babylonians looked at Taurus in the sky, they saw this specific mythic beast, a symbol of immense, untamed natural force, divine retribution, and the catastrophic power that the gods could unleash upon humanity. Its place in the spring sky, a time of year associated with thunderstorms and renewal, connected it to both creative and destructive power. The constellation we know as Libra, the scales, presents another fascinating case. The Babylonians knew it as Zib, Ba, and Na, which translates to the scales or the balance. This is one of the few zodiac figures that is not an animal or a person. Its meaning was directly tied to the autumnal equinox, the point in the year when day and night are of equal length. The sun's entry into this constellation marked a moment of perfect celestial equilibrium, a balance that was reflected in the scales. This period was also crucial for commerce and justice. It was the time when crops were harvested, weighed, and stored, and when debts were often settled. The scales in the sky, therefore, represented fairness, judgment, and the divine measurement of a person's actions. It was a symbol of cosmic order and justice, managed by the sun god Shamash, who was also the god of law and truth. The appearance of the scales signaled a time of accounting, both in the granaries and in the moral sphere. Other constellations held equally specific and vital meanings. Scorpio, for instance, was Tab, the scorpion. This was a creature of the underworld associated with the goddess Ishara and seen as a bringer of death and a guardian of the gates to the netherworld. Its appearance in the sky often marked the beginning of the cooler, darker half of the year, a time when the sun's power waned and the forces of darkness seemed to gain strength. Yet, even in its danger, it was a necessary part of the cycle. Sagittarius was Bill, Sag, a centaur-like creature often depicted as a winged archer with a scorpion's tail. He was a god of war and a protective figure, his arrow aimed at the heart of the scorpion, creating a perpetual celestial battle that mirrored the eternal struggle between the forces of creation and destruction. Each of these 12 figures was a piece of a complex, interlocking puzzle. They told a story of the yearly cycle of planting and harvest, of floods and droughts, of life, death, and the judgment of the soul. The Babylonian zodiac was a grand cosmic narrative, a divine language written in the stars where every god, every monster, and every symbol played its part in maintaining the balance of the universe. You've probably heard this before. A friend or an online article declares, "Did you know there's actually a 13th zodiac sign, Ophiuchus?" It sounds like a cosmic secret, a hidden piece of the puzzle that changes everything. So is it true? Well, astronomically, yes. The path of the ecliptic, the sun's yearly journey, does indeed pass through a 13th constellation, Ophiuchus, the serpent-bearer. If you look at precise modern star charts, the sun spends about 18 days in front of Ophiuchus, from around November 29th to December 17th, which is actually more time than it spends in its neighbor, Scorpius. So from a purely observational standpoint, the constellation is right there, straddling the celestial equator. But astrologically and historically, Ophiuchus has never been part of the traditional zodiac wheel. This isn't an oversight or a conspiracy. It's a direct result of the choices made by the Babylonian astronomers over 2,500 years ago. Their decision to use 12 signs was a deliberate, brilliant piece of mathematical and cultural engineering. They were perfectly aware of the stars that make up Ophiuchus, but they had powerful, practical reasons for leaving it out of their official system. The primary reason was their need for a clean, symmetrical calendar that could be easily managed. The Babylonians operated on a sophisticated lunisolar calendar, which synchronized the cycles of the moon with the solar year. A lunar month is roughly 29.5 days long, which means 12 of these months add up to about 354 days, 11 days short of the 365-day solar year. To keep the calendar in sync with the seasons, they would periodically insert an extra month, a leap month, but the number 12 was the foundation. By dividing the great circle of the ecliptic into 12 equal 30-degree segments, they created a perfect, elegant correlation, one zodiac sign for each of the 12 months of their idealized calendar year. This one-to-one correspondence was incredibly useful. It meant that as the sun moved through each 30-degree sector, it roughly corresponded to the passage of one lunar month. This made the zodiac a powerful predictive and calendrical tool. Including a 13th constellation would have shattered this beautiful symmetry. It would have meant 13 uneven sectors for 12 months, creating a messy, asymmetrical system that was much harder to work with mathematically and far less intuitive for tracking time and creating almanacs. The number 12 was clean, orderly, and practical. This preference for the number 12 was deeply embedded in their entire worldview, largely thanks to their revolutionary base 60 numeral system, known as the sexagesimal system. Unlike our base 10 system, which likely arose from counting on 10 fingers, the Babylonian system used 60 as its foundation. The reasons for this choice are debated. It may relate to the number of phalanges on one hand, excluding the thumb, which can be counted with the thumb to reach 12, and then multiplied by the 5 fingers on the other hand to reach 60. Whatever its origin, this system was a mathematical powerhouse. The number 60 is a highly composite number, meaning it can be evenly divided by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30. This makes fractions and astronomical calculations remarkably simple. From this system, we inherited the 60 minutes in an hour and the 60 seconds in a minute, a direct legacy of Babylonian mathematics. Within this framework, dividing the 360-degree circle of the heavens into 12 parts was a natural extension. 360 divided by 12 gives you 30, a clean, whole number that fits perfectly within their base 60 logic. A 13-sign system would have resulted in awkward, uneven degrees that were far more cumbersome to calculate, especially with the clay tablets and arithmetic methods of the time. So, the 12-sign zodiac wasn't an arbitrary choice. It was the most mathematically elegant and computationally efficient solution available. Furthermore, the constellation of Ophiuchus itself didn't fit the neat mythological and seasonal narrative the Babylonians were building. Their zodiac was more than a star map. It was a celestial storybook that reflected their agricultural cycle, their mythology, and the rhythm of their year. The 12 chosen constellations created a complete cyclical narrative. Ophiuchus, depicted as a man wrestling with a serpent, was a known figure in their sky lore, often associated with the healing god Nura or sometimes with the legendary figure Gilgamesh. However, its position and story may have been seen as redundant or disruptive to the flow of their established 12-part drama. The Babylonians had already defined a set of 18 constellations along the ecliptic before streamlining it to 12. In that process, they inevitably had to make cuts to achieve their symmetrical system, and Ophiuchus was one of the constellations that didn't make the final cut. It was a conscious editorial decision, not an accidental omission. So when you hear about the 13th sign, remember that you're witnessing a clash between two different ways of seeing the sky. Modern astronomy looks at the precise physical positions of stars and constellations as defined by the International Astronomical Union. Astrology, on the other hand, is built upon a traditional symbolic system that has its own internal logic, a logic forged in ancient Babylon. The tropical zodiac used in Western astrology is a season-based map, a 12-fold division of space that long ago became disconnected from the specific star constellations it was once named after due to precession. It is a self-contained symbolic language. Adding Ophiuchus to this system would be like inserting a new letter into the middle of the alphabet and expecting all the old words to still make sense. It would disrupt a symbolic and mathematical tradition that has been continuous for millennia. The story of Ophiuchus is a fascinating reminder that our maps of the heavens are not just scientific charts. They are also cultural artifacts reflecting the needs, the mathematics, and the myths of the civilizations that first drew them. The celestial knowledge of the Babylonians, a system born of meticulous observation and divine omens, could have remained a regional secret confined to the temples and scholarly circles of Mesopotamia. But history had other plans, and the conduit for this cosmic revolution would be one of the most ambitious figures the ancient world ever produced, Alexander the Great. His lightning-fast conquests in the 4th century before the Common Era didn't just redraw the political map. They shattered cultural barriers and opened a superhighway for the exchange of ideas, goods, and knowledge across 3 continents. In the wake of his armies, a new hybrid world emerged: the Hellenistic world, a vibrant fusion of Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Mesopotamian cultures. And in this bustling, interconnected era, the Babylonian zodiac began its westward journey, finding a new home and a radical transformation in the intellectually curious and mythologically rich culture of ancient Greece. The transmission was not a simple handoff. It was a complex process of translation, adaptation, and creative reinterpretation, largely centered in the city of Alexandria in Egypt. Founded by Alexander himself, Alexandria became the intellectual capital of the Hellenistic world, home to its legendary library and museum, a kind of ancient university that attracted the greatest scholars, poets, and scientists of the age. It was here that Babylonian astronomical texts carried back by scholars and traders were translated into Greek. Greek thinkers, particularly those in the philosophical schools of Plato and Aristotle, were already deeply interested in cosmology and the idea of a harmonious, mathematically ordered universe. The Babylonian zodiac offered them something they had lacked: a precise, systematic map of that cosmic order. They eagerly adopted the 12-sign structure, the division of the ecliptic, and the fundamental principles of celestial measurement. But the Greeks couldn't simply accept the foreign names and myths attached to these constellations. They saw the starry figures not as omens from Mesopotamian gods, but as a blank canvas upon which to project their own epic stories of heroes, monsters, and gods. In a remarkable act of cultural rebranding, they systematically replaced the Babylonian mythological cast with characters from their own legendary pantheon, giving the zodiac the familiar names and narratives we still use today. Take the constellation the Babylonians knew as Emuel, Lu, Hun, Ga, the hired man or the agrarian worker. To the Greeks, this cluster of stars became Aries, the ram. But not just any ram. This was the magical, flying ram with a fleece of pure gold from the epic legend of Jason and the Argonauts. In the myth, this ram was sent by the gods to rescue the royal children, Phrixus and Hel, from a treacherous plot. Though Hel fell from its back into the sea, Phrixus survived and, in gratitude, sacrificed the ram to the gods and hung its priceless golden fleece in a sacred grove, where it became the object of Jason's famous quest. By linking this constellation to such a well-known and heroic tale, the Greeks infused it with themes of sacrifice, rescue, and the pursuit of a seemingly impossible prize. The ram was no longer a simple agricultural laborer. It was a divine creature central to one of their great national epics. Similarly, the Babylonian constellation of the Great Twins, the fearsome underworld guardians Lugalgara and Meslamtia, underwent a complete personality transplant. The Greeks looked at that same pair of bright stars and saw Castor and Pollux, the famed Dioscuri. These twin brothers, born from an egg after their mother Leda was seduced by Zeus in the form of a swan, were legendary figures. Castor was a master horseman and Pollux a formidable boxer. They were adventurers who sailed with Jason on the Argo and were renowned for their deep, inseparable bond. The myth concludes that when Castor was killed, the immortal Pollux was so grief-stricken that Zeus allowed them to alternate their time between the underworld and Mount Olympus, forever together in the sky as the constellation Gemini. This story transformed the Babylonian gods of death into a powerful symbol of brotherly love, loyalty, and the hope of eternal life beyond death. The constellation's meaning shifted from dread and pestilence to camaraderie and undying connection. This process of mythological overlay happened across the entire zodiacal wheel. The Babylonian lion, associated with the fierce summer sun, was effortlessly mapped onto the Nemean lion, the invulnerable beast slain by the hero Heracles as the first of his 12 labors. The scales of justice, Zib, Ba, and Na, were reimagined as the scales held by Astrea, the goddess of justice, who, according to some accounts, was the last of the immortals to leave the earth at the end of the Golden Age, ascending to the heavens to become the constellation Virgo. Even the fearsome scorpion was integrated into Greek myth as the creature sent by the goddess Artemis to kill the boastful hunter Orion, creating an eternal celestial chase where Orion sets as Scorpius rises, forever pursued across the sky. This wasn't a random matching game. The Greeks were master storytellers, and they expertly wove these celestial figures into the fabric of their existing cosmic narrative, creating a unified and deeply resonant sky mythology that was distinctly their own. This Greek rebranding was so successful, so poetically compelling, that when the Romans later absorbed Greek culture, they adopted these very same stories and Latinized the names, which is why we today call them Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and so on, rather than their ancient Babylonian titles. The journey from the clay tablets of Mesopotamia to the star charts of the modern world was secured by the imaginative power of Greek mythology, which gave the zodiac the timeless, narrative heart that continues to captivate us. This elegant fusion of Babylonian science and Greek mythology, born in the cosmopolitan hubs of the Hellenistic world, needed one final, crucial act to secure its immortality. It needed a genius to synthesize, to organize, and to write it all down in a work of such overwhelming authority that it would become the astronomical Bible for the next 1500 years. That genius was Claudius Ptolemy, a Greco-Egyptian scholar living in Alexandria during the 2nd century of the Common Era, and his masterpiece was the Mathematical Syntaxis, a book the world would later know by its Arabic given title, the Almagest, or the Greatest. Ptolemy did not discover the zodiac, nor did he invent its 12 signs. His monumental contribution was one of systematic codification. Imagine the state of astronomical knowledge at the time, a magnificent but sprawling collection of observations from Babylon, competing geometric models from Greece, and a rich tapestry of mythological star lore. Ptolemy's goal in the Almagest was audacious: to create a complete mathematical explanation of the cosmos, a comprehensive treatise that could predict the motions of every celestial body with unparalleled accuracy. At the heart of this cosmic model was a stationary Earth, around which the stars, sun, moon, and planets revolved in a complex dance of circles upon circles, a system we now call the Ptolemaic model. To build this intricate celestial machine, he needed a fixed and stable reference frame, an unchanging backdrop against which the wanderings of the planets could be measured. This backdrop was the sphere of the fixed stars, and meticulously mapped onto it were 48 constellations. This act of cataloging was far more than just making a list. Ptolemy was drawing a definitive, authoritative map of the known heavens, and in doing so, he was cementing the Greek interpretation of the zodiac for all of Western history. He formally listed the 12 zodiacal constellations, describing their positions and the brightest stars within them, locking in the Greek mythological identities that had overwritten the original Babylonian ones. In Ptolemy's cosmos, the ram was unquestionably the golden-fleeced Aries, the bull was the Cretan beast vanquished by Hercules, and the twins were Castor and Pollux. By including these figures as fundamental components of his scientific model, he erased their multicultural origins and presented them as universal, eternal facts of nature. The Almagest was so brilliantly comprehensive, its mathematics so powerful and predictive, that it didn't just describe the sky, it defined it. For centuries, to be an astronomer was to learn from Ptolemy. His work became the unshakable foundation, the standard textbook from which there was no appeal. But why was the Almagest so enduringly influential? Its power lay in its breathtaking predictive utility. Ptolemy's geometric system, with its clever use of epicycles and deferent small circles riding on larger circles, could explain the perplexing retrograde motion of the planets, where they appear to loop backwards in the sky with remarkable precision. An astronomer using the Almagest's tables could forecast lunar eclipses, plot the future positions of Mars or Jupiter against the zodiacal signs, and create almanacs with a level of accuracy that seemed almost magical. This practical success is what cemented its authority. It worked, and because it worked so well for the observational tools available at the time, the cosmic blueprint it provided, complete with its Greek named zodiac, was accepted as absolute truth. The Church later found it compatible with a geocentric, God-created universe, and medieval Islamic scholars who preserved and expanded upon the text, translated it and passed it on to a reawakening Europe. Ptolemy became the ultimate gatekeeper. His catalogue was the official version of the sky, and the 12 Greek signs were now an unchangeable part of the scientific and cultural canon. His influence stretched far beyond the lecture halls of Alexandria. Consider the practical impact on navigation and timekeeping for over a millennium. Sailors and explorers from the Mediterranean to the edge of the known world relied on celestial navigation. The stars were their only guide across trackless oceans. Ptolemy's precise star catalogue, with the zodiac as its central belt, gave them a reliable map. They could identify their position by knowing which zodiac constellation was culminating at night or where the moon was in its monthly journey through the ecliptic. Similarly, the calendar and the agricultural cycle were intimately tied to the sun's passage through these 12 signs. The Almagest provided the mathematical backbone that made these long-term predictions possible, embedding the zodiac even deeper into the practical, everyday life of countless civilizations. It wasn't just esoteric knowledge for priests and philosophers, it was essential technology, and Ptolemy was its chief engineer. So, while we credit the Babylonians with the invention and the Greeks with the rebranding, we must credit Claudius Ptolemy with the preservation and institutionalization of the zodiac as we know it. He was the great unifier, the synthesizer who took the vibrant, living traditions of multiple cultures and forged them into a single, unassailable system. His Almagest was the vehicle that carried this specific Greek interpretation of the celestial animals and heroes safely through the fall of the Roman Empire, through the Dark Ages, and into the modern world. When you look at a star chart today or read your horoscope, you are, in a very real sense, reading from a map that was definitively drawn in the 2nd century, in the Great Library of Alexandria, by a man who sought to capture the entire universe in a web of mathematics and myth. While the Babylonians were perfecting their 12-fold division of the ecliptic, another civilization just across the sands was developing its own profound and equally sophisticated relationship with the stars. In ancient Egypt, the night sky was not merely a canvas for divine messages, but a practical, working instrument, a celestial clock that governed both their daily rituals and their journey into the afterlife. Their system was built not upon the ecliptic path of the sun, but on the principle of heliacal rising, the moment when a star or group of stars, after having been invisible due to the sun's glare, reappears just before dawn on the eastern horizon. This daily rebirth of specific stars gave rise to one of Egypt's most brilliant and enduring astronomical contributions, the system of 36 decans. The very word decan comes from the Greek dekanos, meaning 10th, a reference that hints at its later integration, but the concept is purely Egyptian. These decans were 36 small constellations or individual bright stars that rose consecutively on the horizon, each one marking the beginning of a new hour of the night. The Egyptians divided the night into 12 hours just as we do, but their hours were not fixed in length. They varied with the seasons, expanding in the summer and contracting in the winter. As the Earth journeyed around the sun, the stellar backdrop would slowly shift. Each decan would serve as the star of the hour for a 10-day period, after which the next decan in the sequence would take its place, thus marking a 10-day week. Over the course of a full year, 36 of these decan stars would cycle through, creating a beautifully precise star-based calendar that told them not only the time of night but also the time of year. This system was not a theoretical exercise. It was carved into the very fabric of their existence, most famously immortalized inside the lids of royal coffins and on the ceilings of tombs. These star clocks or diagonal calendars are some of the most direct evidence we have of their celestial precision. Picture a detailed table painted on the inside of a sarcophagus lid. The table is divided into 36 columns, one for each 10-day week of the year, and 12 rows, one for each hour of the night. At the intersection of each row and column is the name or a depiction of the specific decan star that should be rising during that hour on that particular night of the year. A priest or astronomer would use this table like a modern-day star chart, identifying the current decan and thereby knowing the exact hour. This knowledge was critical for timing the elaborate religious ceremonies that had to be performed at specific moments during the night to maintain cosmic order or math. But its importance stretched far beyond ritual. For the Egyptians, time was cyclical and regenerative, and the stars were intimately linked to concepts of death and rebirth. The most important decan of all was Sirius, the dog star, known to them as Sopdet. Its heliacal rising after a 70-day period of invisibility coincided with the annual flooding of the Nile River, the lifeblood of Egypt. This event signaled the beginning of their new year, a time of renewal, fertility, and salvation from the arid summer. The appearance of Sirius was a moment of national celebration, a divine signal that the gods were once again blessing the land. The decan system, therefore, was a practical tool that connected the microcosm of their daily lives to the macrocosm of the cosmic and agricultural cycles. The story of how this uniquely Egyptian system eventually collided and merged with the Babylonian zodiac is a testament to the incredible cultural exchange of the Hellenistic period, particularly within the intellectual melting pot of Alexandria. After Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in 332 before the Common Era, the city of Alexandria became a nexus where Greek, Egyptian, and Babylonian knowledge swirled together. Greek scholars who had already adopted the Babylonian zodiac encountered the Egyptian decans and recognized a system of immense sophistication. The challenge was to reconcile two different cosmic maps, one based on the sun's path through 12 constellations and the other based on 36 stars rising on the horizon. The solution was a brilliant act of syncretism. The Greeks and later the Romans essentially superimposed the two systems, they divided each of the 12 30-degree zodiac signs into 3 smaller segments of 10 degrees each. Each of these 10-degree segments was then placed under the governance of one of the Egyptian-decans. This fusion created a new, layered form of astrology. Now, a person's birth chart was not only influenced by their main zodiac sign, like Leo or Scorpio, but also by the specific dean ruling the 10-degree segment of the sign the sun was in at their moment of birth. This added a deeper layer of personalization and nuance. Furthermore, the Egyptians contributed their own powerful astrological imagery that was absorbed into the Greco-Roman tradition. The constellation we know as Capricorn, for instance, is a sea goat in the Mesopotamian and Greek systems. But in Egyptian mythology, the goat fish was associated with their god of the Nile inundation, Hapi, further blending the symbolism of celestial and earthly fertility. This cross-cultural pollination enriched Western astrology immeasurably, adding the Egyptian concept of time as a regenerative, cyclical force governed by specific stellar spirits to the Babylonian structure and Greek mythology that already formed its core. The decans, though their original timekeeping function faded with the invention of more precise mechanical clocks, lived on for centuries in astrological texts, a silent, enduring legacy of the Egyptian genius for watching the night sky not just as a story, but as the most reliable clock in the universe. The torch of celestial knowledge, now brilliantly fused by the Greeks, was passed next to a civilization renowned not for its philosophical ponderings, but for its ruthless practicality and unparalleled talent for administration, the Romans. Where the Greeks saw a cosmic storybook and the Babylonians a divine warning system, the Romans saw something else entirely, a powerful tool. They looked at the complex art of astrology and asked a quintessentially Roman question: how can this serve the state? The answer led to its most profound and widespread integration into the fabric of a society, yet weaving the zodiac into everything from imperial policy and military strategy to the daily rhythms of the common citizen. The Romans, ever the cultural magpies, did not create their own astrological system from scratch. They enthusiastically absorbed the entire Hellenistic tradition, translating Greek texts into Latin and adopting the now familiar 12 signs with their mythological backstories, which they simply renamed with their own Latin equivalents. Aries became the ram, Taurus the bull, and Gemini the twins, names we still use today. But this was not a mere change of language, it was a fundamental shift in application. For the Romans, astrology, or astrologer, became less about understanding the harmony of the spheres and more about acquiring actionable intelligence about the future, a form of divine reconnaissance to be used for maintaining power and navigating an uncertain world. This utilitarian embrace was most visible and most dangerous at the very top of Roman society in the court of the emperors. The stability of the empire and the life of the emperor himself were believed to be written in the stars, making the imperial astrologer one of the most influential and perilous positions in Rome. These were not mere fortune-tellers, they were highly skilled scholars, often Greek or Egyptian, who could cast a detailed birth chart or thema mundi and interpret the ominous movements of planets and comets. The Emperor Tiberius, a notoriously complex and paranoid ruler, was said to have been a skilled astrologer in his own right. The historian Suetonius recounts that Tiberius kept a personal astrologer named Thrasyllus on the island of Rhodes. So great was his dependence on Thrasyllus' predictions that he once, suspecting the astrologer of knowing too much, led him to the edge of a cliff during a reading, threatening to hurl him to his death if his forecasts were inaccurate. When Thrasyllus calmly reaffirmed his prediction that Tiberius would one day become emperor, the impressed Tiberius not only spared him but made him his most trusted advisor. This story encapsulates the Roman emperor's relationship with astrology, a blend of reliance, fear, and the constant awareness that a prophecy of one's own downfall could just as easily be a death warrant for the prophet. Other emperors wielded this celestial power more aggressively, Augustus I Emperor famously publicized his own horoscope, minting coins bearing the sign of Capricorn, his ascendant or rising sign. This was a masterstroke of political propaganda. By linking his destiny to a specific celestial sign, he was not just sharing a personal detail, he was broadcasting a divine mandate to rule, suggesting that his authority was preordained by the cosmos itself and therefore beyond the challenge of mortal men. This top-down endorsement meant that astrology seeped into every layer of Roman life, becoming a universal language for decision-making. For the common Roman, consulting the stars was as natural as checking the weather. Before embarking on a long journey, opening a new business, or even getting married, a prudent citizen would consult an astrologer to determine if the celestial conditions were favorable. The poet Juvenal, in his famous satires, paints a vivid picture of Roman wives who would scarcely venture into the street without first checking the almanac to see which way the planet Mercury was pointing. Military generals scheduled their campaigns based on astrological calendars, believing that the position of Mars, the god of war, could determine the outcome of a battle. This widespread belief created a booming industry for astrologers who set up shop in the bustling forums and marketplaces. Yet this popularity also bred official suspicion. Astrology was a double-edged sword. While it could be used to legitimize an emperor's rule, it could also be used to plot his downfall. Predicting the death of an emperor or the rise of his successor was considered a treasonous act, a direct threat to the state's security. As a result, astrologers were periodically expelled from Rome in great purges, their practices banned, only to inevitably drift back, their services too deeply in demand to be suppressed for long. This cycle of embrace and expulsion reveals the central tension. The Roman state both craved the certainty astrology offered and feared the subversive power of its predictions. Beyond the spheres of politics and personal fortune, the zodiac became deeply embedded in the very art and soul of Roman culture, a testament to its complete absorption into the Roman worldview. It appears in stunning visual form in mosaic floors, like the famous 2nd century example found in a villa in Pompeii, which depicts a beautifully detailed zodiac circle with the gods of the 7 known planets at its center. This wasn't just decoration, it was a statement of sophisticated belief, a cosmic diagram laid at the very feet of the homeowner. The great epic poet Virgil, in his foundational work the Aeneid, laced his narrative with astrological symbolism, aligning the destiny of his hero, Aeneas, with celestial portents to elevate his journey to a cosmic scale. The most influential voice, however, was the scholar Marcus Manilius, who composed the Astronomica, a lengthy didactic poem written entirely in Latin hexameter. This remarkable work is a complete astrological treatise in verse, explaining the characteristics of each zodiac sign, the influence of the planets, and the method of casting a horoscope. Manilius didn't just translate Greek knowledge, he Romanized it, presenting astrology as a natural and noble science, a system of divine law that governed the universe and justified the hierarchical order of Roman society. In his writing, the zodiac was no longer a foreign import, it was a Roman truth. Through these cultural artifacts, the mosaics, the poetry, the public monuments, the 12 signs transcended their mystical origins to become a fundamental part of the Roman identity, a shared symbolic language that connected the humblest citizen to the mightiest emperor under the same predictable and magnificent sky. While the Romans were weaving the zodiac into the fabric of their empire, the very same Babylonian knowledge was embarking on a parallel journey eastward, carried along the thriving trade routes that connected the Mediterranean world to the Indian subcontinent. This eastward migration, likely occurring during the Hellenistic period or even earlier through Persian intermediaries, led to one of the most sophisticated and enduring adaptations of the celestial system, Vedic astrology, or Jyotish, which translates to the science of light. The Indian scholars who encountered the Babylonian zodiac did not simply adopt it. they subjected it to a profound intellectual and spiritual transformation, integrating it seamlessly into their own ancient, pre-existing cosmological framework. The result was a system that shares the same basic 12-sign structure as its Western counterpart, but operates on fundamentally different philosophical and astronomical principles, creating a unique and powerful astrological tradition that has been practiced continuously for over 2,000 years. The most critical and defining difference lies in the type of zodiac used. Western astrology relies on the tropical zodiac, which is fixed to the seasons and the position of the sun relative to the Earth's equator. Vedic astrology, in stark contrast, employs the sidereal zodiac, which is anchored to the actual, observable positions of the fixed stars. Think of it this way: the tropical zodiac is a map of solar energy based on our planet's relationship with the sun, creating a system tied to the experiential cycle of the seasons. The sidereal zodiac is a map of the cosmos itself, a coordinate system fixed to the vast, seemingly unmoving backdrop of the galaxy. This distinction is not merely academic. It has a direct and dramatic consequence known as the ayanamsa, or the precessional shift. Due to the slow, wobbling motion of Earth's axis called precession, the starting point of the tropical zodiac, the first point of Aries, gradually drifts backward through the constellations over a cycle of approximately 26,000 years. This means that the tropical and sidereal zodiacs, which were aligned over 2 millennia ago, have since drifted apart by about 24 degrees. As a result, if you were born on, say, April 10th, your Western sun sign would be Aries. However, because of this drift, the sun on that date is actually positioned in front of the constellation of Pisces from a sidereal perspective. Therefore, your Vedic sun sign would be Pisces. This 24-degree gap explains why your sign in a Vedic chart is almost always one sign behind your Western sign, fundamentally altering the core interpretation of your birth chart from the very beginning. Beyond this astronomical divergence, Vedic astrology developed its own rich and complex system of interpretation that places a far greater emphasis on fate, karma, and spiritual evolution. While Western astrology often focuses on psychological traits and personal potential, Jyotish is fundamentally a tool for understanding one's dharma, life's purpose, and navigating the karmic lessons one is meant to learn in this lifetime. The planets in Vedic astrology are not just celestial bodies, they are conscious divine forces called grahas, which translates to Caesars or influencers. Each graha embodies a specific type of energy and is considered a manager of a particular department of life, carrying the fruits of our past actions or karma into our present experience. For instance, Shani, the planet Saturn, is a particularly feared and respected figure. In Western astrology, Saturn represents discipline, structure, and limitation. In Vedic thought, Shani is the stern karmic accountant, the lord of justice who delivers the consequences of our past deeds, both good and bad. A difficult period under Shani's influence, known as Sade Sati, a 7.5-year Saturn return, is not seen as random bad luck, but as a necessary and ultimately purifying phase of karmic reckoning and maturation. Similarly, the shadow planets Rahu and Ketu, the north and south lunar nodes, have no physical bodies but hold immense significance. They represent the points where the moon's path crosses the ecliptic, and in myth, they are the head and tail of a severed demon. Rahu is associated with obsessive desire, material ambition, and the unquenchable thirst for worldly experience, while Ketu relates to spirituality, liberation, and the release from material attachments. Their placement in a chart points to the soul's deepest compulsions and the spiritual lessons it must master in this life. The technique for interpreting a birth chart, or kundli, in Vedic astrology is also remarkably detailed and predictive. A Vedic astrologer constructs a chart that looks quite different from a Western one, often divided into asymmetrical houses and placing a heavy emphasis on the moon's position. The moon, or Chandra, is considered the ruler of the mind and emotions, and its nakshatra, or lunar mansion, is meticulously analyzed. The 27 nakshatras are another brilliant layer of Vedic astrology, dividing the ecliptic into 27 segments, each ruled by a specific star and possessing its own unique mythology and symbolism. This provides a degree of nuance far beyond the sun sign alone. Furthermore, Vedic astrology employs a sophisticated system of planetary periods called dashas, which act like a karmic calendar. These are lengthy cycles, each ruled by a specific planet, that unfold over the course of a lifetime. The dasha system allows a Vedic astrologer to make remarkably precise predictions about the timing of major life events, indicating when the karma managed by a particular planet will become activated and manifest in a person's experience. It's a system built not just for understanding character, but for forecasting the ebbs and flows of destiny itself, offering guidance on when to act and when to remain patient. This profound synthesis, taking the Babylonian structure of 12 signs and layering it with the sidereal framework, the philosophy of karma, the power of the lunar nodes, and the predictive precision of the dashas, created a truly distinct science of the stars. It stands as a powerful testament to the zodiac's incredible adaptability, showing how a single cosmic map could be redrawn to navigate the spiritual landscape of an entirely different civilization. As the light of classical learning flickered and dimmed in Europe during the early Middle Ages, a brilliant new intellectual dawn was breaking in the East. While much of the West was fragmented and turning inward, the Islamic world, unified under the Abbasid Caliphate, was entering a period of unprecedented scholarly flourishing known as the Islamic Golden Age. This was an era of magnificent libraries, bustling centers of learning, and a vibrant, cosmopolitan culture that stretched from the Iberian Peninsula to the edges of India. And at the heart of this intellectual revolution was a passionate, systematic effort to seek out, translate, and build upon the knowledge of all the civilizations that had come before. The fate of the zodiac, along with the entire corpus of Greek science, now rested in the hands of these scholars who did far more than just preserve it. They refined it, challenged it, and propelled it to new heights of sophistication. The engine for this massive translation movement was the legendary House of Wisdom, or Beit al-Hikmah, established in Baghdad during the 9th century. Think of it as a combination of a royal library, a research institute, and a massive translation bureau funded by the caliphs themselves. Under rulers like Al-Mamun, who was deeply fascinated by philosophy and science, agents were sent far and wide to acquire Greek, Syriac, Pahlavi, and Sanskrit manuscripts. These texts, works by Plato, Aristotle, Hippocrates, and most importantly for our story, Ptolemy's Almagest, were then brought to Baghdad, where teams of scholars, often including Christians and Jews working alongside Muslims, translated them meticulously into Arabic. This was not a simple word-for-word transcription. It was an act of deep intellectual engagement. The translators had to grapple with complex concepts, often creating new Arabic scientific vocabulary in the process. Ptolemy's monumental work, which synthesized the Greek and Babylonian knowledge of the cosmos, was now known by its Arabic given title, Al-Magisti, later Latinized to Almagest, meaning the greatest. Through this colossal effort, the 12-sign zodiac, its mathematical framework, and the geocentric model of the universe were not lost to the Dark Ages. They were given a new lease on life, inscribed in a language that would become the new lingua franca of science for centuries. But the scholars of the Islamic Golden Age were not mere librarians or copyists. They were brilliant innovators in their own right, who took Ptolemy's work as a starting point and subjected it to rigorous scrutiny. They built magnificent observatories like the one at Marrakech and later in Samarkand, equipped with massive, precision-engineered instruments, astrolabes, quadrants, and armillary spheres, that allowed them to track the movements of the planets with an accuracy the ancient world had never known. They soon began to notice slight discrepancies between Ptolemy's predictions and what they actually observed in the night sky. This led to major refinements in astronomical tables. The Persian polymath al-Battani, known in the West as Albatenius, made extraordinarily precise observations of the solar year and the precession of the equinoxes, that slow wobble of Earth's axis that causes the zodiacal starting point to drift. His calculations were significantly more accurate than Ptolemy's, and his work, Kitab al-Zij, became a foundational text for later astronomers in both the Islamic world and Europe. This critical, evidence-based approach meant that the celestial map of the zodiac was being constantly updated and corrected, its positions refined through generations of patient, meticulous observation. In the realm of astrology itself, known as Ilm al-Nujum, or the science of the stars, Islamic scholars made profound theoretical contributions. They absorbed the Hellenistic traditions but also integrated influences from Persian and Indian astrology, creating a rich synthetic system. A key development was their emphasis on and refinement of the system of aspects, the specific angular relationships between planets in a birth chart, such as conjunctions, sextiles, squares, and trines, which were believed to modify their influence. They also placed great importance on the concept of dignities, where a planet's power was thought to be strengthened or weakened depending on which zodiac sign it was in. Perhaps one of their most enduring legacies to Western astrology was the system of the 12 astrological houses as we know them today. While the concept of houses existed in Hellenistic astrology, it was Islamic scholars who developed the sophisticated mathematical methods for dividing the ecliptic into the 12 unequal segments that form the house cusp, creating the detailed blueprint for the birth chart wheel that astrologers still use. The great philosopher and scientist Al-Kindi wrote extensively on the celestial influences reaching the earthly realm, and the Persian astronomer Abu Mashar, or Albumassar, became one of the most influential astrologers in history. His work, The Great Introduction to the Science of Astrology, was a monumental compilation that synthesized Greek, Persian, and Indian knowledge, and when it was later translated into Latin, it became a primary textbook in European universities for centuries. This vast reservoir of knowledge, now enriched and expanded, could not remain confined to the Islamic world forever. The crucial bridge back to Europe was forged in several places, but most notably in the multicultural cauldron of Al-Andalus or Islamic Spain. In cities like Toledo, Cordoba, and Seville, a second great translation movement began in the 12th century. Christian scholars, often working with Jewish and Muslim colleagues, flocked to these centers of learning to translate the Arabic scientific treasures, which included the preserved Greek texts as well as the original commentaries and advancements by Islamic scholars into Latin. Figures like Gerard of Cremona traveled to Toledo specifically to find Ptolemy's Almagest. When he discovered it, he spent years mastering Arabic so he could translate it, along with nearly 90 other scientific works, into Latin. This flow of knowledge fundamentally reawakened European intellectual life. Suddenly, scholars in Paris, Oxford, and Bologna had access to a sophisticated body of scientific thought that had been lost to them for centuries. They encountered not only the original Ptolemaic system with its Greek zodiac, but also the critical commentaries and precise observational data of thinkers like al-Battani and the complex astrological theories of Abu Mashar. The zodiac, along with the entire science of astronomy, was reintroduced to the West not as a primitive relic, but as a living, evolving discipline more advanced than it had ever been in Roman times. This transmission laid the direct groundwork for the European Renaissance and the scientific revolution, providing the very data and theories that figures like Copernicus and Kepler would later use to challenge the ancient cosmos they had inherited. For the learned monks and scholars of the medieval European monastery, the cosmos presented a profound theological challenge. Here was this magnificent, complex universe, described in breathtaking detail by pagan Greeks and Babylonians, yet operating under the sovereign hand of the Christian God. The solution was not to reject this inherited knowledge, but to baptize it, to cleanse the zodiac of its pagan divinatory soul, and repurpose its body as a testament to divine order. This intellectual alchemy transformed the starry figures from arbiters of fate into servants of God, becoming a celestial illustration of his perfect creation. The primary vehicle for this was the monastic manuscript, painstakingly copied by hand in bustling scriptoria. Within the pages of psalters, devotional works, and encyclopedic compilations like Isidore of Seville's Etymology, the zodiac found a new home. In one of the most stunning examples, the Tres Riches Heures du Duc de Berry, a 15th century book of hours, each month is gloriously illustrated with labor of the month, peasants harvesting in August, nobles feasting in January, and presiding over each scene, tucked into a semicircle at the top of the page, is the corresponding zodiac sign. The sun's entry into Virgo is not a signal for personal introspection, but a divine marker for the time of the grain harvest. The ram of Aries appearing in the sky does not dictate personality, but heralds the lambing season in spring. The zodiac was thus seamlessly woven into the labors of the months, a Christianized cycle of time that connected human toil directly to God's celestial calendar, sanctifying the annual rhythm of agricultural life. This Christian repurposing reached its most sublime expression in the stone and glass of the great cathedrals. Walking into a medieval church like the Basilica of Saint Sernin in Toulouse or Chartres Cathedral, a visitor is surrounded by a cosmos in miniature. The zodiac often appears carved in stone on facades and doorways, or glowing in the intricate rose windows, positioned in a harmonious circle opposite personifications of the labors of the month. This architectural scheme was no mere decoration. It was a powerful visual sermon for a largely illiterate congregation. It placed human life within a vast, orderly universe designed and sustained by God. The message was clear: just as the stars and seasons follow a predictable divine plan, so too should human society adhere to a fixed hierarchical order. The lion, the virgin, the archer, these were no longer pagan gods but symbolic elements in a grand celestial liturgy. They were part of the magnificent clockwork of creation, their movements a testament to the glory and wisdom of the Christian God, and their presence in the church served to demystify the heavens and reclaim them for orthodoxy. Yet, outside the sacred walls of the church and the monastery, the zodiac retained a fiercely practical, almost mundane power in the daily lives of ordinary people. In an age before printed almanacs, its most widespread application was in the realm of medicine, governed by a system known as iatromathematics. This was a complex fusion of astrology, ancient humoral theory, and early science, and it dominated medical practice for centuries. The human body was seen as a microcosm of the universe, with each of the 12 zodiac signs governing a specific part of the anatomy. Aries ruled the head, Taurus the neck, Gemini the arms and lungs, and so on, all the way down to Pisces presiding over the feet. This created a detailed celestial map of the body. A physician would never consider performing a bloodletting or administering a powerful purgative without first consulting an astrological calendar. The moon's phase was critical. It was believed that bodily fluids or humors waxed and waned with the lunar cycle. Bleeding a patient when the moon was in the sign governing the part of the body to be treated was considered extremely dangerous, as it might cause an uncontrollable flow. Even the gathering of medicinal herbs was dictated by the stars, with certain plants thought to be most potent if picked under the specific zodiacal sign that ruled their healing properties. This was not seen as superstition, but as advanced rational science, a way of aligning human treatment with the fundamental rhythms of the cosmos to ensure the best possible outcome. This practical application extended seamlessly into agriculture, the very foundation of medieval life. the peasant's calendar was written in the stars. The appearance of certain constellations and the sun's passage through the zodiac provided the most reliable long-range forecast available. The period when the sun was in Taurus, the bull of course, a universal symbol of strength and fertility, was understood as the prime time for planting and plowing. The intense heat of the dog days of summer, named for the dog star Sirius but coinciding with the sun's transit through Leo, signaled a time when crops could wither and human passions were thought to run high, advising caution in both farming and personal conduct. The passing of the autumnal equinox, marked by the sun's entry into Libra, the scales, was the signal to harvest, weigh, and store the year's bounty and to settle debts. This knowledge was disseminated not through books, but through oral tradition, church sermons, and public sculptures, making the zodiac a shared, communal tool for survival. It was a democratized science, allowing the lowliest farmer to participate in the grand cosmic order, using the same celestial clock that governed the king and the pope to decide when to sow his wheat and when to prune his vine. The medieval zodiac was therefore a figure of fascinating duality, a spiritual symbol of God's orderly creation within the church, and a vital, practical almanac for health and harvest outside of it, proving its incredible adaptability and enduring power to structure human time and understanding. And so, the stage was set for a profound rebirth. As Europe emerged from the Middle Ages, a new wind of intellectual curiosity began to blow, one that sought to reconcile the divine order of the Church with the rediscovered rationalism of the classical world. This era, the Renaissance, witnessed an extraordinary phenomenon, the zenith of astrology as a respected and rigorous academic science, practiced in the very same breath as astronomy by the greatest minds of the age. It was a time when the mapping of celestial influences was considered the highest form of natural philosophy, a key to unlocking not only the secrets of the human soul but the very mechanics of God's universe. The rediscovery of ancient texts preserved and enhanced by Islamic scholars flooded into Europe, landing on the desks of thinkers who were no longer content to see the stars as mere symbolic illustrations. They were now active forces, and understanding their intricate dance was a scientific and spiritual imperative. This was the world of Tycho Brahe, the aristocratic Danish astronomer who built the most advanced pre-telescopic observatory the world had ever seen, Uraniborg. Tycho was a meticulous empiricist, dedicating his life to compiling an unprecedented catalogue of planetary positions with staggering accuracy. But for Tycho, this painstaking data collection had a dual purpose. He was a firm believer in astrology, viewing it as the practical application of his astronomical work. He cast horoscopes for royalty, interpreted the Great Comet of 1577 as a portent of change, and even predicted the death of the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent based on a lunar eclipse. For him, there was no contradiction. The precise measurement of a planet's path was the first step. Understanding the divine influence that path exerted upon the earthly realm was the ultimate goal. His science was a complete system where observation and interpretation served a unified cosmic vision. This synthesis reached its most fascinating expression with Johannes Kepler, Tycho's one-time assistant and the man who would later discover the laws of planetary motion. Kepler was a deeply complex figure, a brilliant mathematician whose mystical leanings were woven directly into his scientific breakthroughs. He served as the imperial mathematician to Rudolf II in Prague, a role that required him to be both court astronomer and court astrologer. While he privately expressed skepticism about the simplistic, fortune-telling side of astrology, which he called astronomy's foolish little daughter, he never abandoned its core principles. Instead, he sought to reform it, to ground it in a more physical and harmonic reality. He believed in a universe designed by God according to geometric and musical principles, and he saw the aspects, the angular relationships between planets, as a form of celestial music that resonated with the human spirit. His most famous astrological work was the horoscope he cast for the brilliant but volatile military commander Albrecht von Wallenstein. Kepler's predictions were remarkably insightful, forecasting a period of great restlessness and ambition in 1630, followed by a time of extreme danger in 1634. History records that Wallenstein's ambitions indeed peaked around 1630, and he was assassinated in 1634. While Kepler would have been the first to caution against seeing this as simple fate, his work demonstrates the serious, analytical approach Renaissance thinkers applied to astrology. For Kepler, it was a developing science, one that required the same mathematical rigor he applied to calculating the orbit of Mars. He was trying to find the underlying physical laws that connected the macrocosm of the heavens to the microcosm of human life. The intellectual engine that powered this astrological revolution, however, was not confined to royal courts or private observatories. It was a technological marvel that democratized knowledge on a scale never before imagined. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century. Before the press, books were rare, expensive, hand-copied artifacts, limiting astrological knowledge to a privileged few. The printing press changed everything. It allowed for the mass production of texts, and among the very first bestsellers were astrological almanacs and ephemerized tables listing the daily positions of the planets. Suddenly, for the first time in history, personalized horoscopes were not just for kings and popes. A thriving commercial market exploded. A literate merchant in Venice or a well-to-do farmer in England could now purchase an inexpensive blank chart and, using a printed manual and an ephemeris, learn to cast their own nativity or pay a local scribe to do it for them. These printed horoscopes provided a framework for understanding one's character, fortune, and health, offering a sense of personal agency and cosmic place in a rapidly changing world. This was the birth of mass-market astrology, a direct precursor to the newspaper horoscopes of today. The printed word standardized the symbols and techniques, creating a consistent astrological language that spread across the continent, embedding the 12 signs of the zodiac even deeper into the popular consciousness of Europe. It transformed astrology from an esoteric secret of the elite into an accessible tool for self-discovery and navigating the uncertainties of life for the common person, completing its journey from the temple ziggurats of Babylon to the bustling market squares of the Renaissance. And so we arrive at the first sign of the zodiac, the fiery initiator, the celestial trailblazer Aries the Ram. This is where the sun begins its tropical journey at the spring equinox, a point of rebirth and raw, undirected energy. But to truly understand the essence of Aries, we must peel back the mythological layers and travel back to its ancient roots in Mesopotamia. Long before the Greeks envisioned a golden fleeced ram soaring through the heavens, the Babylonians looked upon this cluster of stars and saw something far more humble and fundamental to their society: Mul. Lu Hun Ga, which translates to the hired man or the agrarian worker. This was not a heroic or divine figure, but a representation of the common laborer, the backbone of their agricultural economy. Its appearance in the sky coincided with the beginning of the agricultural year in spring, a time for plowing and planting. This constellation symbolized the commencement of the annual cycle of food production, embodying the themes of hard work, renewal, and the vital, initial effort required to ensure the community's survival. It was a sign of pure, practical action tied directly to the turning of the seasons and the earth itself, a far cry from the epic heroism it would later embody. This practical, earthy symbol underwent a spectacular transformation when it entered the Greek mythological imagination. The Greeks, master storytellers that they were, looked at these same stars and saw not a simple farmer, but the magnificent flying golden ram from the epic tale of Jason and the Argonauts. According to the legend, this ram was sent by the gods to rescue the royal children, Phrixus and Hel, from their wicked stepmother. As the ram carried them across the sea to safety, hell fell from its back into the strait that bears her name to this day, the Hellespont. Phrixus, however, reached the distant land of Colchis safely. In gratitude for his deliverance, he sacrificed the ram to the gods and hung its priceless golden fleece in a sacred grove, where it became the object of Jason's legendary quest. By overlaying this powerful myth onto the constellation, the Greeks completely reinvented its meaning. The celestial figure was no longer about collective agricultural labor. It became a symbol of rescue, divine intervention, and the daring pursuit of a seemingly impossible goal. The ram was transformed from a worker of the earth into a courageous, magical savior, its golden fleece representing a prize of ultimate value worth any risk. This shift in narrative fundamentally altered the sign's core energy, infusing it with the themes of heroism, adventure, and the bold initiative that we associate with Aries to this very day. This assertive, pioneering spirit is powerfully reinforced by its modern planetary ruler, Mars. In Roman mythology, Mars was the god of war, a figure embodying raw aggression, courage, and an unyielding drive to conquer. When you combine the ram's head first charging nature with the relentless, competitive energy of Mars, you get a potent astrological profile of pure dynamism. Aries is the spark of ignition, the first thrust of energy that initiates action without hesitation. This Martian influence fuels the Aries' need to be first, to lead the charge, and to face challenges head-on. It's an energy that thrives on competition and the thrill of the new, often characterized by a direct, sometimes blunt, honesty and an immense reservoir of physical and mental courage. They are the archetypal warriors and pioneers, driven by an inner fire that refuses to be extinguished. This connection to Mars makes Aries naturally assertive, passionate, and incredibly resilient in the face of obstacles, though it can also manifest as impulsiveness, a quick temper, and a tendency to act before thinking through all the consequences. The ram, guided by Mars, does not wait for permission. It simply charges forward, creating the path as it goes. Further defining this sign's fundamental nature is its elemental association, fire. The three fire signs Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius are all characterized by inspiration, enthusiasm, and a radiant, life-affirming energy. But Aries represents the pure, unadulterated spark of that fire. Think of the very first moment a match is struck, that brilliant, sharp flash of light and heat. That is Aries fire. It is not the sustained, warm glow of a hearth fire, nor the spreading, transformative power of a wildfire. It is the initial burst of combustion. This elemental force makes those born under Aries naturally inspirational, passionate, and incredibly spontaneous. They are quick to champion a cause, defend the underdog, or embark on a new adventure. Their enthusiasm is infectious, and they possess an unwavering belief in their own abilities and a powerful desire to leave their mark on the world. This fiery core gives them an incredible zest for life and a relentless optimism, but it also means their energy can burn out as quickly as it ignites if not sustained by a tangible challenge or a clear goal. They are the starters of the zodiac, the ones who get the ball rolling with an explosive, contagious energy that can motivate everyone around them. When we synthesize these ancient origins, mythological transformations, and astrological correspondences, a clear picture of the core Aries personality emerges. Historically, those born under this sign are seen as natural-born leaders, brimming with courage, independence, and an entrepreneurial spirit. They are the trailblazers, the innovators, and the fearless individuals who are not afraid to step into the unknown. Their strengths are legendary. They are honest to a fault, incredibly resilient, fiercely loyal to those they care about, and possess a childlike enthusiasm that can be utterly disarming. An Aries will fight for what they believe is right with every ounce of their being, and will defend their loved ones with unwavering ferocity. However, the shadow side of this potent energy is just as pronounced. Their impulsive nature can lead them to make hasty decisions they later regret. That Martian drive can tip over into aggression, a quick temper, and a tendency to be argumentative or domineering. Their intense focus on being first can sometimes come across as selfish or impatient, and they may struggle with seeing projects through to completion once the initial exciting challenge has worn off. The ultimate lesson for the Aries soul is to learn to channel that magnificent, initiating fire with conscious direction, to combine their legendary courage with patience, and to lead not just with force but with wisdom. They are here to teach us all the power of beginning, the courage of the first step, and the raw, beautiful energy of pure, unbridled potential. Leaving behind the fiery trail of Aries, we now step into a realm of earthy stability and sensual beauty with the second sign of the zodiac, the steadfast and resolute Taurus, the bull. If Aries is the spark of creation, Taurus is the slow, deliberate act of building something tangible and lasting from that initial energy. This is the sign that asks us to slow down, to savor the physical world, and to find profound security in what we can touch, taste, and hold dear. To understand the deep, primal strength of this sign, we must once again journey back to its origins in the ancient world of Mesopotamia, where its celestial form was not a gentle creature of the field, but a being of cosmic, destructive power. The Babylonians knew this constellation as Ju and Na, the bull of heaven, and it was the celestial counterpart to one of the most formidable creatures in all of their mythology, a figure central to the great epic of Gilgamesh. In that foundational story, the goddess Ishtar, enraged by the hero Gilgamesh's rejection of her advances, demands that her father, the sky god Anu, unleash the bull of heaven to punish the arrogant king and his city. This was no ordinary animal, it was a divine weapon of mass destruction. With a single snort, the bull could tear open the earth, creating chasms that swallowed hundreds of people. Its very presence brought famine and devastation. When Gilgamesh and his companion Enkidu finally succeed in slaying the magnificent beast, their act of defiance, while heroic, seals Enkidu's fate, leading to his tragic death. So, for the Babylonians gazing at this constellation, the bull was a symbol of immense, untamed natural force, the raw, terrifying power of the gods, and the catastrophic consequences of hubris. It represented a power that could both create and destroy, a force of nature that demanded respect and reverence, grounding the sign from its very inception in themes of immense strength, material reality, and the high stakes of earthly existence. This formidable Babylonian beast underwent a significant, though no less dramatic, transformation when it was adopted into the Greek mythological sphere. The Greeks looked at the same V-shaped cluster of stars we recognize as the Hyades, forming the face of the bull, and they saw a story of desire, deception, and the birth of a continent's identity. In their version, the king of the gods, Zeus, became infatuated with a beautiful Phoenician princess named Europa. To approach her without arousing the suspicion of his ever-jealous wife Hera, Zeus transformed himself into a magnificent, strikingly beautiful white bull. This was no fearsome monster. This bull was gentle, with a coat as white as snow and a calm, alluring demeanor. Europa, charmed by the creature's gentleness, was eventually persuaded to climb onto its back. The moment she did, the bull surged forward, galloping across the land and then plunging into the sea, carrying her across the Mediterranean to the island of Crete. There, Zeus revealed his true form, and Europa became the mother of Minos, the future king of Crete, and the namesake for the entire continent of Europe. This myth profoundly reshaped the bull's symbolism. It retained its immense power and connection to divinity, but that power was now channeled through themes of seduction, beauty, and material possession. The bull became a symbol of Zeus's potent generative force, a creature whose beauty was so compelling it could lure a princess across an ocean. This story infuses the Taurus archetype with a deep appreciation for aesthetics, physical pleasure, and the powerful, possessive nature of love and desire, adding layers of sensuality and allure to the bull's raw, earthly strength. The modern ruling planet of Taurus provides the key to unlocking this sign's core motivation, Venus. In Roman mythology, Venus is the goddess of love, beauty, money, and pleasure. While she rules two signs Taurus and Libra, her expression in earthy Taurus is distinctly different from her airy manifestation in Libra. In Taurus, Venus is in her domicile, expressing her most fundamental, tangible qualities. This is not the Venus of abstract romantic ideals or social harmony. This is the Venus of the five senses. Taurus is ruled by the need to experience pleasure directly through the physical body and the material world. They find profound joy in the taste of a perfectly cooked meal, the texture of luxurious fabric against their skin, the scent of rain on dry earth, the sound of beautiful music, and the sight of art that stirs the soul. This Venusian influence makes Taurus the great hedonist of the zodiac, with an innate and refined appreciation for quality, comfort, and the finer things in life. It also governs their relationship with resources and value. Taurus understands the worth of things in a very concrete way, giving them a natural talent for building financial security and an eye for investments that have enduring value. They are not impulsive spenders, they are collectors and curators who derive a deep sense of safety from possessing beautiful, well-made objects and a stable bank account. The shadow side of this Venusian rule can be an over-attachment to possessions, a tendency toward stubbornness born from a resistance to change that might disrupt their comfort, and an indulgence in laziness or sensuous excess. But at its heart, Taurus, ruled by Venus, seeks to create a personal paradise, a secure and beautiful haven built through patience and a deep, abiding connection to the physical realm. This tangible, grounded nature is further solidified by Taurus's elemental association, Earth. The earth signs Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn are all practical, reliable, and oriented toward the material world, but Taurus represents the fundamental, fixed principle of Earth. Think of the earth element itself solid, enduring, fertile, and life-sustaining. Taurus is not the shifting sand or the cultivated field. It is the ancient bedrock, the foundational soil that supports all growth. This fixed earth quality gives Taurus its legendary stability, patience, and perseverance. They are not easily moved or swayed. Once they set their mind on a goal or establish a routine, they possess the dogged determination to see it through, no matter how long it takes. They move at their own deliberate pace, much like a bull grazing contentedly in a field, unmoved by the frantic energy around it. This connection to the earth makes them natural nurturers with a deep, often unspoken, love for nature, animals, and the simple, honest pleasures of life. A walk in a forest, the feel of soil in their hands while gardening, or the quiet comfort of their own home can be sources of immense rejuvenation for a Taurus. Their strength is not the explosive force of Aries, but the slow, steady, irresistible power of a glacier or a growing tree, a strength that comes from deep roots and an unwavering presence. This elemental force makes them the anchors of the zodiac, the people you can count on to be exactly where they say they will be, doing exactly what they promise to do, providing a rock-solid foundation in a world of constant change. When we weave together these ancient myths, planetary rulership, and elemental force, the core personality of the Taurus individual comes into sharp focus. Historically and astrologically, those born under this sign are the builders, the providers, and the guardians of security. They are renowned for their steadfast loyalty, immense patience, and a profound sense of responsibility toward those they love. A Taurus friend is a friend for life, and they will offer a shoulder to cry on and practical help in a crisis without hesitation. Their strengths are their incredible reliability, a strong work ethic, a keen eye for value, and a deeply sensual and artistic nature that allows them to create and appreciate beauty in its most tangible forms. They possess a quiet, inner strength that can weather any storm and a calming presence that can soothe the most frazzled nerves. However, the bull's shadow side is as pronounced as its light. Their greatest strength, stability, can curdle into extreme stubbornness. The fixed earth nature means they deeply dislike change and can dig in their heels when confronted with new ideas or forced alterations to their routine. Their love for comfort and pleasure can lead to possessiveness, overindulgence, and a resistance to stepping outside their comfort zone. The ultimate lesson for the Taurus soul is to learn the difference between security and stagnation. They are here to teach us the value of patience, the profound satisfaction of a job well done, the importance of building a life that feels solid and real, and the revolutionary act of truly savoring the beautiful, simple moments that the physical world has to offer. From the steadfast, earthy realm of Taurus, we now launch into the airy, mercurial domain of the third sign, Gemini, the twins. If Taurus represents the solid ground of reality, Gemini is the invisible wind that moves over it, the realm of thought, information, and the ceaseless connections between ideas and people. This is the sign of duality in its purest form, embodying an eternal dance between two sides of a single coin, a perpetual quest for mental stimulation and the next piece of fascinating data. To grasp the profound nature of this duality, we must return to its powerful origins in Mesopotamia, where this constellation was not seen as a pair of heroic brothers, but as something far more formidable and ancient. The Babylonians knew these stars as Mash, Tab, Ba, Gal, the great twins, and they were identified with the twin gods Lugalgura and Meslamtir. Their names translate to the mighty king and the one who has come forth from the Meslam, a temple dedicated to the underworld god Nergal in the city of Cutha. These were not the friendly companions of later myths. They were fierce, fearsome deities who served as divine guardians of the thresholds between worlds, particularly the gateway to the underworld. They were associated with war, pestilence, and the scorching, destructive heat of the midday sun. For the Babylonians, the appearance of these twins in the night sky was a potent reminder of the ever-present powers of death, judgment, and the harsh realities of divine retribution. This original incarnation grounds the Gemini archetype in a powerful, pre-existing duality, the connection between the world of the living and the dead, between creation and destruction, and between the illuminating light of knowledge and the scorching fire of truth. This fearsome Babylonian duality was completely reimagined and softened when the constellation was absorbed into the rich tapestry of Greek mythology. The Greeks looked upon the same two bright stars, Castor and Pollux, and saw a story that would become one of their most beloved legends, the tale of the Dioscuri. According to the myth, the twins were born from the same egg after their mother, Leda, was seduced by Zeus, who had taken the form of a swan. However, their parentage was split. Pollux was the immortal son of Zeus, while Castor was the mortal son of Leda's husband, King Tyndareus of Sparta. Despite this difference, the brothers were inseparable, renowned for their deep bond and shared adventures, including sailing with Jason and the Argonauts in search of the Golden Fleece. The pivotal moment in their myth comes when Castor, being mortal, is killed in a battle. Pollux, utterly grief-stricken and unable to bear eternity without his other half, begged his father Zeus to allow them to remain together. Moved by this devotion, Zeus granted them a unique immortality, allowing them to alternate their days between the underworld and the heights of Mount Olympus, forever united in the sky as the constellation Gemini. This story masterfully reframed the twins' duality. It was no longer about terrifying underworld guardians, but about the duality of mortal and immortal, body and soul, death and eternal life. The myth transformed them into a powerful symbol of brotherly love, undying loyalty, and the hope that connection can transcend even the finality of death, infusing the Gemini archetype with its core themes of communication, connection, and the bridging of divides. The planet that rules this entire process of connection and exchange is Mercury, and its influence is absolutely central to understanding the Gemini personality. In Roman mythology, Mercury was the swift-footed messenger of the gods, the patron of communication, commerce, travelers, and thieves. He was the nimble intellect that could move effortlessly between the realms of the gods and mortals, translating divine will into human language and facilitating every kind of transaction. This mercurial energy is the very lifeblood of Gemini. It gifts those born under this sign with a quick, agile mind that thrives on processing and disseminating information. They are the natural journalists, teachers, translators, and networkers of the zodiac, fascinated by the what, how, and why of everything they encounter. A Gemini's mind is like a perpetual motion machine, constantly making connections between seemingly unrelated ideas, which is why they are often brilliant at seeing multiple sides of an argument and synthesizing new concepts. This rulership makes them incredibly curious, adaptable, and excellent communicators, though the shadow side can be a tendency toward restlessness, superficiality if they don't dive deep, and a nervous energy that can make it difficult to focus on one thing for too long. They are not necessarily duplicitous, as the old stereotype suggests, but they do possess a mercurial ability to see and express multiple truths simultaneously, which can be misunderstood by those who seek a single, fixed perspective. This nimble, intellectual nature is further defined by Gemini's elemental association, air. The air signs Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius are all oriented toward the world of ideas, social interaction, and intellectual pursuits. But Gemini represents the mutable or adaptable expression of air. Think of air itself. It is invisible, essential for life, and constantly in motion. Gemini is not the steady, predictable breeze, but the quick, changeable wind that can shift direction in an instant, carrying seeds, scents, and sounds from one place to another. This mutable air quality makes Gemini the great communicator and connector of the zodiac. Their primary function is to facilitate the exchange of ideas, just as the wind carries pollen from one flower to another. They are fascinated by people, gossip, news, and the latest trends, not out of malice, but out of a genuine, insatiable curiosity about the human experience. A conversation with a Gemini is often a lively, wide-ranging tour through numerous topics, as their agile minds leap from one subject to the next with effortless grace. This elemental force makes them incredibly social, witty, and perceptive, able to read a room and adapt their communication style to fit any audience. However, this constant mental motion can also lead to a lack of rootedness, difficulty with emotional depth, and a challenge in committing to one path when so many others seem equally intriguing. Their gift is their ability to connect, to inform, and to see the patterns that others miss. Their lesson is to learn to sometimes still the winds of their mind and find the profound value in stillness and sustained focus. When we synthesize these ancient origins, mythological transformations, and astrological correspondences, the multifaceted personality of the Gemini individual comes vividly to life. Historically and astrologically, those born under this sign are the eternal students and master communicators of the zodiac. They are renowned for their wit, their charm, their insatiable curiosity, and their ability to talk to anyone about anything. A Gemini can make a stranger feel like an old friend within minutes, thanks to their genuine interest and facile conversational skills. Their strengths are their mental agility, their adaptability in any social or intellectual situation, their youthful enthusiasm, and their ability to learn new skills with remarkable speed. They are the ones who will devour 3 books in a week on completely different subjects, effortlessly pick up a new language, or have a fascinating fact ready for any occasion. They keep the world turning by facilitating the flow of information and connecting people and ideas that would otherwise remain separate. However, the shadow side of this mercurial energy is just as real. Their need for constant mental stimulation can lead to boredom, a lack of follow-through on projects once the initial intellectual challenge is gone, and a reputation for being fickle or unreliable. Their ability to see all sides can sometimes come across as indecisive or inconsistent, and their quick minds may occasionally deliver a sharp, cutting remark without fully considering the emotional impact. The ultimate lesson for the Gemini soul is to learn to integrate their duality, to channel their brilliant intellect with heartfelt intention, and to discover that true knowledge comes not just from gathering endless information, but from connecting that information to create genuine wisdom and meaningful human understanding. They are here to teach us the power of curiosity, the joy of conversation, and the incredible potential that is unlocked when we dare to connect with the world through an open and ever-inquiring mind. Emerging from the quick-witted, airy domain of Gemini, we now dive into the deep, emotional waters of the fourth sign, Cancer the Crab. This marks a profound shift in the zodiac's journey, moving from the realm of the mind to the realm of the heart, from communication to feeling, and from social connection to the most primal of bonds. If the first three signs were about the self, its resources, and its immediate environment, Cancer is where we first encounter the concept of home, family, and the deep, often hidden currents of our emotional lives. To comprehend the protective shell and soft interior of this sign, we must venture back to its ancient origins in Mesopotamia, where its celestial form was seen not as a single creature, but as a pair of gatekeepers. The Babylonians knew this constellation as Lul, a term that intriguingly refers to both a crab and a turtle. This duality is deeply significant. In their celestial mapping, these two creatures were depicted as guardians, often shown holding up the celestial gates through which the sun passed at the summer and winter solstices. The crab, with its hard exterior and sideways scuttling motion, and the turtle, with its protective shell and ancient association with the primordial waters, were both perfect symbols for a threshold. They represented the turning points of the year, the moments when the sun appears to stand still before reversing its course. For the Babylonians, this constellation symbolized protection, tenacity, and the crucial liminal space between one state and another, grounding the sign from its inception in themes of cyclical time, emotional boundaries, and the instinct to safeguard what is most vulnerable. This Babylonian guardian was thrust into the heart of one of Greek mythology's most famous and grueling battles when the constellation was adopted into the Hellenistic tradition. The story is found in the legend of Hercules and his 12 labors. The second labor tasked the hero with slaying the Lernaean Hydra, a monstrous, multi-headed serpent that haunted the swamps of Lerna. Every time Hercules would chop off one of its heads, two more would grow back in its place, making the creature seemingly invincible. As Hercules wrestled with this nightmare, the goddess Hera, who despised the hero as a living reminder of her husband Zeus's infidelity, sent a giant crab to aid the Hydra. The crab scurried out of the swamp and clamped its powerful pincers onto Hercules' foot, attempting to distract and incapacitate him. In a swift and furious response, Hercules, with his immense strength, crushed the crab under his heel. Despite its failure, Hera, grateful for the creature's loyalty and sacrifice, placed its image among the stars as the constellation Cancer. This myth adds a layer of profound pathos to the sign's character. The crab is not a mighty victor, but a loyal, if outmatched, defender. It acts on instinct, driven by a deep-seated need to protect its territory and its ally, even in the face of overwhelming force. This story infuses the Cancer archetype with its core themes of fierce loyalty, defensive tenacity, and a profound, often sacrificial, connection to home and family, even when that home is as murky and challenging as the Hydra's swamp. The celestial body that governs the ever-shifting emotional landscape of Cancer is the moon, and its influence is absolutely fundamental to understanding this sign's core nature. In astrology, the moon represents our deepest needs, our instincts, our unconscious patterns, and our emotional security. It is the ruler of the tides, both in our oceans and within ourselves, governing the cyclical ebb and flow of our feelings. Just as the moon waxes and wanes through its phases, so too does the Cancerian emotional world experience natural cycles of receptivity, fullness, and retreat. This lunar rulership makes those born under Cancer incredibly sensitive, intuitive, and attuned to the subtle emotional undercurrents in any environment. They are like human lunar mirrors, reflecting the moods of those around them, often absorbing the feelings of others as if they were their own. This gives them an almost magical capacity for empathy and nurture, but it also makes them highly vulnerable to being emotionally overwhelmed. The moon's influence drives the Cancerian desire for a safe, secure, and comforting home, a literal and emotional sanctuary where they can retreat from the harshness of the world, much like the crab retreats into its shell. The shadow side of this lunar energy can be moodiness, clinginess, and a tendency to hold onto emotional wounds or cling to the past as a source of security. But at its luminous heart, Cancer, ruled by the moon, seeks to create emotional nourishment and a profound sense of belonging for themselves and for those they consider their kin. This deep, fluid, and nurturing nature is further defined by Cancer's elemental association, water. The water signs Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces are all characterized by emotion, intuition, and depth of feeling, but Cancer represents the cardinal or initiating expression of water. Think of water itself. It is the source of all life, receptive, nurturing, and capable of flowing around any obstacle or eroding the hardest stone over time. Cancer is the wellspring, the initial pool from which the river of emotion begins to flow. This cardinal water quality gives Cancer its powerful initiating energy in the emotional realm. They are often the ones who establish family traditions, create the emotional tone of a home, and are the first to offer comfort and care in a crisis. Their strength is not in forceful confrontation, but in the gentle, persistent power of water to nurture, to hold, and to heal. This elemental force makes them incredibly protective and devoted parents, partners, and friends. A Cancer's home is rarely just a building. It is a living extension of their emotional world, a curated space filled with memories, heirlooms, and comforts designed to nourish the soul. However, this profound connection to the emotional realm can also lead to a shell of defensiveness when they feel threatened. Just as a crab uses its hard exterior to protect its soft body, a Cancer can retreat behind a wall of moodiness, passive aggression, or clinginess if their sense of security is challenged. Their gift is their boundless capacity to nurture and make others feel truly seen and cared for. Their lesson is to learn to nurture themselves with the same tenderness they offer others, and to find the courage to flow with their emotions without being consumed by them. When we synthesize these ancient origins, mythological sacrifices, and astrological correspondences, the deeply layered personality of the Cancer individual comes into heartfelt focus. Historically and astrologically, those born under this sign are the nurturers, the historians, and the heart of the family. They are renowned for their profound empathy, their fierce loyalty, and their almost preternatural ability to make a house feel like a home. A Cancer remembers birthdays, cherishes family recipes, and holds the stories of their lineage close to their heart. Their strengths are their incredible emotional intelligence, their nurturing instinct, their tenacity, and their unwavering devotion to those they love. They are the ones you call when your world is falling apart, because they will not try to fix you with logic, but will sit with you in your pain, offering a cup of tea, a warm blanket, and a safe space to feel. They possess a quiet, resilient strength that comes from a deep connection to the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. However, the shadow side of this watery energy is just as potent. Their sensitivity can make them easily hurt, leading them to withdraw into their shell where they can brood over perceived slights for a surprisingly long time. Their powerful attachment to home and family can manifest as clinginess, smothering behavior, or a resistance to necessary change and independence, both for themselves and for their loved ones. Their mood swings can be as unpredictable as the tides, and their defensive nature can sometimes push away the very people they are trying to hold close. The ultimate lesson for the Cancer soul is to learn to build an inner sense of security that is not entirely dependent on external circumstances or other people. They are here to teach us the profound power of unconditional care, the importance of emotional honesty, and the sacred art of creating a sanctuary, both within ourselves and in the world, where the heart can feel truly safe, valued, and at home. From the protective, watery shell of Cancer, we now emerge into the blazing, radiant heart of the zodiac, where the sun holds undisputed sway, the domain of Leo the lion. This is the sign that commands center stage, radiating confidence, warmth, and a regal presence that is impossible to ignore. To truly appreciate the raw power and kingly status of Leo, we must journey back to its earliest known incarnation in the ancient Near East. The Babylonians, those master celestial cartographers, looked up at this distinctive pattern of stars and saw Gu, La, a name that translates with simple, fearsome clarity to the lion. In the world of Mesopotamia, the lion was not just another animal, it was the ultimate symbol of untamed power, ferocity, and royal authority. The constellation's appearance in the night sky coincided with the hottest, most intense period of the summer, when the sun was at its most dominant and scorching in the northern hemisphere. This was not a gentle, life-giving heat, but an overpowering, desiccating force that mirrored the lion's own ferocious nature as the king of the beasts. The celestial lion was thus intimately linked with the sun's supreme power, embodying a time of year when the sun's authority was absolute and its presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. For the Babylonians, this lion was also closely associated with their powerful goddess Ishtar, the deity of love, war, and fertility, who was frequently depicted standing upon the back of a lion, a vivid representation of her mastery over the most potent forces of nature. From its very origins, then, Leo was forged in the fires of sovereignty, strength, and a divine, commanding presence. This formidable Babylonian lion was seamlessly and powerfully integrated into the most famous cycle of Greek heroic legends, the 12 labors of Hercules. The Greeks looked at the same constellation and saw the specific mythical beast known as the Nemean lion. According to the myth, this was no ordinary lion. It was a monstrous offspring of the moon goddess Selene, its skin impervious to any mortal weapon, whether made of iron, bronze, or stone. It terrorized the region of Nemea, dwelling in a cave with 2 entrances and devouring the local populace. The demigod Hercules, as his very first labor, was tasked with slaying this invulnerable creature. After his arrows and sword proved useless, bouncing harmlessly off the beast's hide, Hercules used his immense strength to block one of the cave entrances and confront the lion directly. In a spectacular display of raw power, he wrestled the creature and ultimately strangled it to death with his bare hands. Unable to skin it with a blade, he used the lion's own razor-sharp claws to remove its magnificent pelt, which he then wore as an impenetrable cloak and helmet for the rest of his adventures. To honor this incredible feat of heroism, Zeus placed the lion's image among the stars as the constellation Leo. This myth profoundly reinforced the sign's core themes. The Nemean lion represents an invincible, majestic force that can only be overcome by courage, strength, and ingenuity. By conquering it, Hercules doesn't diminish the lion's power. He assimilates it, wearing its skin as a badge of his own heroic, kingly status. The story cements Leo's association with heroism, triumph over impossible odds, and the glorious, visible expression of personal power and valor. The celestial body that governs this entire magnificent display is fittingly the sun itself. In astrology, the sun represents the core self, the conscious ego, the vital life force, and the fundamental drive toward self-expression and creativity. Just as the sun is the literal center of our solar system, around which all planets revolve, the solar influence in a Leo's life places their essential identity at the center of their world. This rulership gifts those born under Leo with an innate need to shine, to be recognized, and to express their unique individuality in a bold, generous, and often dramatic fashion. They are here to leave their mark, to create a legacy, and to radiate their inner warmth and creativity out into the world. The sun's influence makes Leos naturally confident, charismatic, and magnetic, drawing others into their orbit like planets circling a star. They possess a powerful, generous heart and a loyal nature, but the shadow side of this solar energy can be a tendency toward pride, arrogance, and a desperate need for constant validation and applause. A Leo deprived of recognition can feel as dark and cold as an eclipsed sun. Yet, at their most evolved, a Leo governed by the sun understands that true leadership is not about dominating others, but about inspiring them, warming them with their generosity, and helping everyone in their circle to feel seen and valued, much like the sun that nourishes all life on Earth. This radiant, life-affirming energy is further fueled by Leo's elemental association, fire. We've encountered the fire element before with Aries, but Leo represents the fixed or sustained expression of fire. If Aries is the initial spark, Leo is the steady, brilliant, and warming blaze of a bonfire or the sun's unceasing nuclear furnace. This fixed fire quality gives Leo its legendary loyalty, consistency, and enduring passion. They are not flighty or impulsive. Once their heart is committed to a person, a project, or a principle, they burn with a steady, unwavering flame. This is the fire of the heart, of drama, of romance, and of grand creative expression. It makes Leos naturally enthusiastic, warm-hearted, and incredibly generous with their affection and resources. They love to celebrate, to play, and to bring a sense of joy and drama to everything they do. A Leo's presence can light up a room, their laughter is infectious, and their enthusiasm can motivate an entire group. However, this fixed nature can also make them stubborn and resistant to change, especially if it threatens their pride or their position. Their fire, if unchecked, can burn too hot, leading to dramatic outbursts, a controlling nature, or an inflated ego that demands to be the constant center of attention. Their gift is their magnificent ability to inspire joy, courage, and creativity in others. Their lesson is to learn to share the spotlight gracefully and to understand that real strength includes vulnerability and the empowerment of others. When we synthesize these ancient origins, heroic myths, and astrological forces, the vibrant personality of the Leo individual comes into brilliant focus. Historically and astrologically, those born under this sign are the natural leaders, performers, and noble hearts of the zodiac. They are renowned for their immense courage, their unwavering loyalty, and their inherent sense of dignity and honor. A Leo will defend their loved ones with the ferocity of a lioness protecting her cubs, and will stand up for what they believe is right with unshakable conviction. Their strengths are their generosity, their charisma, their creative flair, and their ability to lead with warmth and inspiration rather than fear. They are the ones who organize the party, who give the most heartfelt toasts, who perform on stage, and who encourage everyone around them to be a little more fabulous, a little more brave, and a little more true to themselves. They carry a natural air of royalty, not in a snobbish way, but in a way that expects the best from themselves and others. However, the shadow side of this solar energy is just as bright. Their need for admiration can sometimes cross into vanity or a desperate hunger for flattery. Their fixed nature can make them incredibly stubborn and resistant to criticism, even when it's constructive. Their dramatic flair can occasionally tip over into melodrama or a perception that everything is about them. The ultimate lesson for the Leo soul is to move from a focus on the ego to a focus on the heart. They are here to teach us the power of self-expression, the courage to be authentically and unapologetically ourselves, the importance of loyal leadership, and the glorious, life-giving magic of sharing our inner light with a world that deeply needs its warmth and its roar. After the radiant, dramatic performance of Leo, the zodiac's journey turns inward, focusing on the details, the systems, and the quiet, indispensable work that sustains the world. We now enter the domain of Virgo the Virgin, a sign whose symbol is one of the most misunderstood in the entire celestial menagerie. The modern image of a virgin often conjures ideas of innocence or chastity, but the ancient reality is far richer and more complex, rooted in the most fundamental of human concerns, the harvest and the sacred act of discernment. To uncover its true meaning, we must look to the fertile plains of Mesopotamia, where the Babylonians saw this constellation not as a human figure, but as a sheaf of wheat. They knew it as Abi, Sin, the pharaoh, and it was personified as the goddess Shola, who was often depicted holding a spike of grain. This celestial figure was intimately tied to the goddess of grain and fertility, and its appearance in the night sky heralded the crucial time of the harvest. For an agricultural society, this was a moment of life and death. The success of the harvest determined survival through the coming winter. The constellation represented the culmination of the year's labor, the careful separation of valuable grain from useless chaff, and the divine blessing of abundance. This original incarnation grounds Virgo in themes of practical service, purification, and the meticulous work required to sustain life itself, themes that have remained at the heart of its symbolism for thousands of years. When this celestial pharaoh was adopted into Greek culture, it found a powerful new identity, though one still deeply connected to the earth and the concept of sacred order. The Greeks associated the constellation with two primary goddesses, each adding a profound layer to the Virgo archetype. The first and most direct connection is to Demeter, the majestic goddess of the harvest, agriculture, and the sacred law of the earth. Demeter's story is one of profound devotion and cyclical renewal, centered on the abduction of her daughter Persephone by Hades, god of the underworld. In her grief, Demeter caused the earth to become barren and fallow, refusing to let anything grow until her daughter was returned. This myth perfectly captures a core Virgoan theme, the need for things to be in their proper, functional order. When the natural system is disrupted, everything falls into chaos and disrepair. Demeter's joy upon Persephone's partial return each year brings forth the spring and summer harvest, a period of incredible productivity and nurturing care for the fruits of the earth. The other powerful Greek association is with Astrea, the celestial virgin and goddess of justice. According to legend, Astrea was the last of the immortals to live among humans during the Golden Age. As humanity grew increasingly corrupt and violent, she became so disheartened that she finally fled the earth, ascending to the heavens to become the constellation Virgo, often depicted holding the scales of justice, which we know as the neighboring constellation Libra. This myth infuses Virgo with a deep-seated desire for purity, justice, and an ideal state of being. It's a yearning for a world where everything functions correctly, ethically, and efficiently, free from the messiness of imperfection and moral decay. Both Demeter and Astrea portray Virgo not as a symbol of naive innocence, but of dedicated service, discernment, and a profound commitment to upholding a sacred, functional order in the world. The planet that governs this intricate process of analysis and communication is Mercury, the same ruler as Gemini, but its expression in earthy Virgo is dramatically different. In Gemini, Mercury's energy is airy, scattered, and social, flitting from one idea to the next in a constant search for mental stimulation. In Virgo, Mercury is grounded, focused, and practical. Think of Mercury as the mind's messenger. In Virgo, this messenger is not just carrying information, but sorting it, categorizing it, and figuring out how to make it useful. This mercurial influence makes those born under Virgo the master analysts, editors, and systems engineers of the zodiac. Their minds are like sophisticated filtering machines, constantly taking in data, identifying patterns, spotting errors, and devising more efficient methods. This gives them an unparalleled talent for problem solving, a keen eye for detail that misses nothing, and a deep desire to be of service by fixing what is broken and improving what already works. The shadow side of this rulership can be a tendency toward worry, overthinking, and excessive criticism, both of themselves and others. A Virgo's mind, if not healthily occupied, can get stuck in a loop of analyzing potential problems, leading to anxiety. Yet, at its highest expression, Virgo, ruled by Mercury, seeks to bring order out of chaos, to heal what is ailing, and to apply intelligent, practical solutions to the challenges of everyday life. It is the mind in service to the body and the world, striving for a state of perfect, harmonious function. This tangible, grounded nature is further solidified by Virgo's elemental association, Earth. Alongside Taurus and Capricorn, Virgo is one of the three earth signs, all of which are concerned with the material, practical world. However, Virgo represents the mutable or adaptable expression of Earth. If Taurus is the fixed, fertile soil and Capricorn is the enduring, structured mountain, then Virgo is the cultivated field. It is Earth that can be worked, shaped, and improved. It is the element in its most serviceable and productive form. This mutable Earth quality gives Virgo its incredible adaptability in practical matters and its drive for continuous refinement. They are not content with things as they are. They see the potential for a better, more efficient, more perfect version. This is the energy of the craftsman perfecting their technique, the nutritionist fine-tuning a diet for optimal health, the programmer debugging a complex piece of code. Virgo's connection to the Earth is not about possessing land like Taurus or building enduring structures like Capricorn. It is about the process of cultivation itself, the weeding, the pruning, the nurturing, and the harvesting. This elemental force makes them naturally helpful, industrious, and dedicated to the well-being of the physical world, whether that is the human body, a work environment, or a daily routine. Their strength lies in their modesty, their reliability, and their unwavering commitment to doing a job well, not for glory, but for the deep, intrinsic satisfaction that comes from creating order and providing a useful service. When we weave together these ancient myths, planetary rulership, and elemental force, the evolution of the Virgo archetype from harvest deity to modern analyst becomes beautifully clear. The core thread running through thousands of years is the act of discernment, the separation of the wheat from the chaff. In the Babylonian fields, this was a literal, life-sustaining act. In the modern context, it is a mental and psychological one. The Virgo individual is hardwired to discriminate, to sort, to categorize, and to purify. This is the source of their renowned perfectionism. It is not merely a desire for things to look neat, but a deep, almost spiritual need for things to function at their highest possible potential. Their strengths are their meticulous attention to detail, their profound sense of duty, their analytical brilliance, and a humility that prefers to work behind the scenes. A Virgo is the person who remembers the one typo in a 100-page document, who can reorganize a chaotic closet into a model of efficiency, and who will quietly take on the tedious task that everyone else avoids because they know it needs to be done and done correctly. They are the healers, the technicians, the researchers, and the devoted caregivers whose service is offered not with fanfare but with quiet competence. However, the shadow side of this discriminating energy is a propensity for criticism, both inward and outward. Their sharp eye for flaws can make them overly judgmental, and their high standards can lead to relentless self-criticism when they or their work falls short of the ideal. They can become anxious, fussy, and prone to worrying about minute details that others find insignificant. The ultimate lesson for the Virgo soul is to move from a focus on criticism to a practice of compassion, to learn that perfection is not a static destination, but a continuous process of improvement, and that true service includes accepting the beautiful, necessary imperfections in themselves, in others, and in the world they work so diligently to improve. Moving gracefully from the earthy, analytical domain of Virgo, we enter the harmonious and aesthetically refined world of Libra, the scales. While every sign in the zodiac represents a unique archetype, Libra holds a special distinction. It was the very last of the 12 to be formally recognized as an independent constellation, a development that speaks volumes about its core theme of seeking balance through relationship and civilization. To understand its late arrival, we need to look back at how the Babylonians, the original architects of the zodiac, viewed this patch of sky. They did not see a set of scales here. Instead, these stars were incorporated into the much larger and more formidable figure of Scorpio. To the Babylonians, this area was known as Zibi, Ba-an, Na, which does indeed translate to the scales, but it wasn't a standalone entity. It was seen as the claws or pincers of the great scorpion itself, the constellation we know as Scorpius. For them, the scales were an appendage of a powerful and dangerous creature, a tool for grasping and holding, integrated into the symbolism of a predator. This original conception paints a fascinating picture. The concept of balance and measurement existed, but it was subservient to a more primal force, a part of the machinery of nature's fierce and unforgiving side, not yet elevated to a principle of its own. The transformation of these celestial claws into the symbol of divine justice we recognize today was a pivotal moment in the zodiac's evolution, and it happened under the watchful eyes of the Romans. While the Greeks acknowledged the scales as the instrument of their goddess Dike, the personification of justice, it was the Romans who solidified its place in the heavens. They looked at these stars and saw the scales of justice held by Astrea, a figure of profound mythological significance. According to Roman poet Ovid, Astrea was the last of the immortals to dwell among humanity during the mythical Golden Age, a time of perfect peace and harmony. As humanity descended through the Silver and Bronze Ages into the violent and corrupt Iron Age, the gods, one by one, abandoned the earth in disgust. Astrea, the goddess of innocence and justice, was the very last to leave. Heartbroken by the wickedness she witnessed, she finally ascended to the sky, carrying her scales with her to become the constellation Virgo, with the scales held beside her as the separate constellation Libra. This powerful myth imbues the sign with its deepest core meaning. Libra is not just about balance for balance's sake, it is a reaction to the chaos and injustice of the world. It represents the civilized human yearning to restore a lost golden age, to bring order out of conflict, and to impose fairness and harmony through reason, law, and art. The scales were literally lifted from the claws of the scorpion and placed in the hands of a goddess, symbolizing humanity's ascent from a state of nature, red in tooth and claw, to a state of society governed by principles of equality and justice. This profound connection to beauty, harmony, and relationship is channeled through Libra's ruling planet, Venus. Just as with Taurus, Venus bestows upon Libra a deep appreciation for aesthetics, pleasure, and connection. However, the expression of Venusian energy in airy Libra is fundamentally different from its expression in earthy Taurus. In Taurus, Venus is about tangible, personal pleasure. The feel of silk, the taste of wine, the comfort of one's own home. It is sensual and possessive. In Libra, Venus operates on an intellectual and social plane. Here, Venus is the planet of diplomacy, of partnership, of artistic beauty, and of ideals. A Libra individual is driven by a need to create harmony in their environment and in their relationships. They have an innate sense of style, balance, and proportion, which can manifest in a love for art, music, design, or any endeavor where elements are composed to create a pleasing whole. The Venusian influence makes them charming, tactful, and eager to please, with a natural talent for seeing all sides of an argument and finding a middle ground. The shadow side of this can be a tendency toward indecisiveness. The scales constantly weighing options can find perfect equilibrium, making it difficult to choose, and a fear of conflict that might lead them to sacrifice their own needs for the sake of keeping the peace. Yet, at its highest expression, Libra, ruled by Venus, seeks to create beauty not just in objects, but in interactions, striving for a world where relationships are equitable, art is uplifting, and society is fair. This intellectual, relational focus is further defined by Libra's elemental association, air. As an air sign, Libra is concerned with the realm of ideas, communication, and social interaction. But unlike the mutable, information-gathering air of Gemini or the fixed, revolutionary air of Aquarius, Libra represents the cardinal or initiating expression of air. Think of air as the medium through which we communicate and connect. Cardinal air is the first breath that starts a conversation, the initial idea for a social contract, the spark that ignites a collaborative project. This makes Libra the great mediator and connector of the zodiac. Their primary mode of operation is through partnership. They actually define themselves through their relationships with others. A Libra often thinks and makes decisions by talking things through, using the social airwaves to test ideas and find consensus. This elemental force gives them a natural grace in social situations, a gift for language and persuasion, and a deep need for intellectual companionship. They are at their best when they are collaborating, debating, or building alliances. However, this reliance on the social sphere can also be a source of weakness. The need for external validation can be strong, and the terror of being alone or disliked can sometimes override their own internal sense of what is right. Their gift is their ability to bring people together, to see the beauty in opposing viewpoints, and to create elegant compromises. Their lesson is to learn to find their own inner balance and sense of self, so that their scales are not forever tipped by the opinions and demands of others. Synthesizing these ancient origins, mythological ascensions, and astrological forces, the character of the Libra individual comes into clear and elegant focus. Historically and astrologically, those born under this sign are the diplomats, the artists, and the advocates for fairness in the zodiac. They are renowned for their charm, their sophisticated taste, and their almost uncanny ability to see every perspective in a disagreement. A Libra is the person who can walk into a room full of tension and, with a few well-chosen words and a disarming smile, calm everyone down and find a solution that leaves all parties feeling heard and respected. Their strengths are their innate sense of justice, their diplomatic skill, their creative flair, and their unwavering belief in the power of civility and reason. They are the ones who remember everyone's birthday, who have an eye for the perfect piece of art to complete a room, and who will passionately argue for what is fair, even when it doesn't directly benefit them. They are the architects of social harmony. However, the shadow side of this balancing act is just as present. Their aversion to conflict can make them seem passive-aggressive or evasive when a direct confrontation is necessary. The constant weighing of options can lead to agonizing indecision, from choosing a restaurant to making major life changes. Their desire for partnership can sometimes cause them to stay in relationships long after they have become unhealthy, simply for the sake of not being alone. The ultimate lesson for the Libra soul is to realize that true harmony is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to navigate it with grace and integrity. They are here to teach us the power of collaboration, the beauty of compromise, and the revolutionary idea that we can build a more just and beautiful world together, one balanced, thoughtful decision at a time. Following the balanced scales of Libra, we descend into the zodiac's most enigmatic and emotionally profound depths, the domain of Scorpio, the Scorpion. This is a sign that has fascinated and intimidated in equal measure for millennia, embodying a raw power that deals not in social pleasantries, but in the fundamental forces of life, death, and rebirth. Its origins, fittingly, are as ancient and formidable as the creature itself, rooted in a celestial vendetta that transcends cultures. The Babylonians, gazing upon this sprawling, hooked pattern of stars, saw a creature of immense power, simply the scorpion, but this was not just any scorpion. In their rich celestial mythology, it was a divine executioner, a creature sent by the gods themselves. The story goes that the boastful and mighty hunter Orion had declared he would hunt and kill every animal on Earth. This arrogant claim angered the gods, who decided to teach him a lesson in hubris. They dispatched the great scorpion from the depths of the underworld to confront the hunter. In a fierce battle, the scorpion delivered a fatal sting to Orion's heel, killing him. As a reward for its service, the gods placed both adversaries in the sky, but positioned them on opposite sides of the celestial sphere, ensuring they would never meet again. To this day, as the constellation Scorpius rises in the east, Orion flees, setting in the west, locked in an eternal cosmic chase. This foundational myth establishes Scorpio's core themes from its very inception. It is the great equalizer, the force that cuts down pride, the agent of necessary endings, and the undeniable, transformative power that emerges from the confrontation with mortality itself. When this powerful Babylonian narrative was adopted by the Greeks, it was not rewritten but rather refined and reinforced, a rare case of cross-cultural agreement on a celestial story. The Greeks saw in the stars the very same scorpion, and they preserved its role in the demise of the giant hunter Orion, seamlessly integrating it into their own mythological canon. In their version, the goddess Artemis, or in some accounts her mother Leto, sent the scorpion to kill Orion after he either boastfully threatened to kill all the beasts of the earth or committed an act of hubris against the gods. The outcome was identical: the scorpion's fatal sting, the hunter's death, and their eternal celestial separation. This consistency across two great civilizations is telling. It suggests that the archetype of the scorpion, as a bringer of a necessary karmic end, resonated on a universal level. The Greeks did not soften the creature, they affirmed its role as an instrument of divine will and natural balance. This duality of Orion, the hunter, and Scorpio, the scorpion, represents one of the most fundamental conflicts in the human experience: the struggle between the conscious, assertive ego, striving for mastery and glory, and the unconscious, primal force that ultimately reminds us of our limits and our mortality. The scorpion doesn't act out of malice, but out of a kind of cosmic necessity, enforcing a law that is older and more powerful than any individual ambition. The modern astrological understanding of this intense energy is brilliantly captured by its dual planetary rulership, a concept that evolved as our knowledge of the solar system expanded. Classically, Scorpio is ruled by Mars, the Roman god of war, raw aggression, and primal desire. This connection makes perfect sense when you consider the scorpion's nature. It is a creature that, when threatened, strikes with swift, focused, and deadly force. The Martian influence in Scorpio gives the sign its legendary willpower, courage, and relentless drive. This is not the blunt, initiating force of Aries, also ruled by Mars, but a more concentrated, strategic, and deeply passionate application of that energy. It's the power of a surgeon's scalpel versus a battering ram. This Martian core fuels Scorpio's intense desires, their fierce loyalty, and their ability to pursue their goals with almost supernatural determination. However, in the modern era, as we discovered the distant, transformative planet Pluto, astrologers assigned it as a co-ruler of Scorpio. Pluto, named for the Roman god of the underworld, the ruler of all that is hidden, repressed, and buried, perfectly encapsulates the other side of Scorpio's nature. Where Mars is about the confrontation, Pluto is about what happens afterward: the decay, the psychological dissolution, and the eventual rebirth from the ashes. Pluto governs the process of total transformation, the compulsory shedding of old skins, and the uncovering of profound, often uncomfortable, truths. This dual rulership creates a fascinating dynamic within the Scorpio psyche. They are driven by a Martian desire to conquer and possess, but they are ultimately compelled by a Plutonian destiny to let go, to be stripped bare, and to be reborn. Their greatest battles are not fought in the external world, but in the internal underworld of their own soul, where they must confront their shadows to emerge renewed and empowered. This profound, often turbulent inner world is defined by Scorpio's elemental association, water. Alongside Cancer and Pisces, Scorpio is one of the three water signs, all connected to emotion, intuition, and the unconscious. But if Cancer is the nurturing wellspring and Pisces is the boundless ocean, then Scorpio is the powerful, deep, and volatile undercurrent. It is water in its most potent and transformative state, the raging waterfall, the churning whirlpool, the pressurized water that carves canyons out of solid rock over eons. This is fixed water, meaning it is intense, contained, and incredibly deep, but with immense pressure building beneath a calm surface. This elemental force gives Scorpios their legendary emotional depth and penetrating intuition. They are not merely feeling an emotion, they are immersed in it, consumed by it, and compelled to understand its very source. They can sense the hidden motives, unspoken tensions, and secret desires in any situation, making them unparalleled psychologists and investigators. Their connection to the water element is what allows them to navigate the murky depths of the human psyche, both their own and others. However, this same depth can be overwhelming. The fixed nature of their water means they can hold onto emotional wounds, resentments, and betrayals for a very long time, and the intense pressure can lead to explosive outbursts or a tendency to manipulate situations from behind the scenes to maintain a sense of control. Their gift is their capacity for total emotional and psychological transformation. Their challenge is to learn to flow with their intense feelings without being drowned by them or using their depth as a weapon. When we synthesize these powerful origins, mythological roles, and astrological correspondences, the complex and magnetic personality of the Scorpio individual comes into sharp, if shadowy, focus. Historically and astrologically, those born under this sign are the alchemists, the psychologists, and the agents of profound change in the zodiac. They are renowned for their incredible intensity, their unwavering loyalty to those they trust, and their almost psychic ability to see through facades and perceive the absolute truth of a person or situation. A Scorpio's passion is all-consuming, whether it's directed toward a relationship, a creative project, or a personal mission. They do nothing by halves. They engage with life at its most raw and real. Their strengths are their resilience, their courage in the face of crisis, their deep capacity for intimacy, and their ability to regenerate themselves after any kind of personal devastation. They are the people you want in your corner during a life or death situation, as they possess a cool-headedness and strategic genius that emerges precisely when everything is falling apart. However, the shadow side of this Plutonian energy is formidable. Their desire for control can manifest as jealousy, possessiveness, and a secretive nature that breeds distrust. Their ability to perceive hidden truths can be twisted into suspicion and a tendency to assume the worst in others. When hurt, their sting is legendary, delivered with surgical precision to the most vulnerable spot. The ultimate lesson for the Scorpio soul is to move from a desire to control power to a state of embodying true power, which is the power that comes from having faced one's own darkness, embraced vulnerability, and learned to use their profound transformative energy for healing and empowerment rather than for destruction. They are here to teach us that from the deepest pain and the most profound endings can come the most powerful and authentic new beginnings. Now we come to a figure whose arrow points ever upward and outward, toward the distant horizon and the farthest reaches of thought, Sagittarius the Archer. This is the sign of the eternal explorer, the philosophical seeker, and the irrepressible optimist who believes the next adventure will always be the greatest one yet. To grasp the unique blend of beast and intellect that defines this centaur archer, we must first look to its origins in the star lore of ancient Mesopotamia. The Babylonians saw in this constellation a truly formidable hybrid, a creature they called Pa Bil, Sag, This was not the gentle, wounded healer of later Greek myths, but a powerful, centaur-like god, often depicted as a winged archer with a scorpion's tail. His name is thought to mean the foremost ancestor or the chief leader, and he was a deity associated with both war and the vital, life-giving function of irrigation. This archer god was a complex figure of both destruction and nurture, his arrow aimed with purpose at the heart of the nearby constellation Scorpius, creating an eternal celestial drama of conflict and protection. In this original form, the archer was a guardian, a divine warrior whose purpose was to maintain cosmic balance, using his bow to hold the forces of darkness and chaos at bay. This ancient role establishes the Sagittarian core of aiming for a higher purpose, of acting as a protector of ideals and a force for expansive order against the forces of contraction and decay. When this Babylonian hybrid was adopted into the Greek world, its identity underwent a profound and humanizing transformation, shifting from a remote god to a beloved, if tragic, mentor. The Greeks looked at this celestial archer and saw not Pabilsag but the wise and noble centaur Chiron. In their mythology, centaurs were often wild, lustful creatures, a symbol of untamed nature. Chiron was the glorious exception. He was the son of the Titan Cronus and the sea nymph Philyra, and he was immortal, wise, and skilled in the arts of medicine, music, and prophecy. He lived in a cave on Mount Pelion and became the tutor to the greatest heroes of Greece, including Achilles, Jason, and Asclepius, the god of medicine himself. The pivotal moment in his story comes from a tragic accident. During a struggle between Hercules and other centaurs, a poisoned arrow, dipped in the venomous blood of the Hydra, struck Chiron. Though immortal, he was cursed with an agonizing, incurable wound. Eventually, to find release from his endless suffering, Chiron willingly gave up his immortality, taking the place of the Titan Prometheus, who was being punished for stealing fire from the gods. In honor of his sacrifice and his immense contribution to civilization, Zeus placed him among the stars as the constellation Sagittarius. This myth completely reframed the archer's purpose. He was no longer just a celestial guardian shooting at a scorpion, but a symbol of enlightened mentorship, the pursuit of knowledge, and the ultimate sacrifice made for the progress of humanity. It infused the sign with its profound drive to seek wisdom, to teach what it has learned, and to believe so powerfully in a better future that it is willing to undergo its own personal transformations to help guide others there. The planet that fuels this boundless quest for meaning and experience is mighty Jupiter, the king of the Roman gods. In astrology, Jupiter is the great benefic, the planet of expansion, luck, philosophy, and higher learning. Where Saturn constructs limits and boundaries, Jupiter relentlessly pushes against them, always seeking more understanding, more adventure, more freedom. This Jovian influence is the very lifeblood of the Sagittarian spirit. It gifts those born under this sign with an insatiable curiosity, an infectious optimism, and an unshakable faith that things will work out for the best. They are the eternal students and professors of the zodiac, driven to understand the big picture, to explore different cultures and belief systems, and to find the underlying philosophy that gives life its meaning. A Sagittarius feels most alive when they are learning something new, traveling to a place they've never been, or engaging in a spirited debate about the nature of truth. The shadow side of this expansive energy can be a tendency toward exaggeration, a lack of attention to practical details, and a restlessness that makes long-term commitment a challenge. They can sometimes be blunt or tactless, mistaking their philosophical truth for the truth for everyone. Yet, at their most evolved, a Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter understands that true wisdom comes from experience, not just dogma, and that their ultimate quest is to expand their own consciousness and, in doing so, inspire others to do the same. This optimistic, pioneering spirit is further ignited by Sagittarius's elemental association. Fire. As the third and final fire sign, Sagittarius represents the mutable or adaptable expression of this radiant element. If Aries is the initiating spark and Leo is the sustained, regal blaze, then Sagittarius is the spreading wildfire, the traveling torch, or the shooting star that arcs across the entire sky. It is fire as inspiration, as a beacon that guides the way. This mutable fire quality gives Sagittarius its legendary love for freedom, movement, and the open road. They are not content to burn in one place for too long. Their fire must travel, must see what is over the next hill, must carry its light to new minds and new territories. This makes them the natural explorers, translators, and pilgrims of the zodiac. Their philosophical nature is not a quiet, solitary contemplation. It is a fire that must be shared, debated, and tested against the wider world. This elemental force makes them enthusiastic, honest to a fault, and blessed with a great sense of humor that can find the irony in any situation. However, this constant need for movement and new stimulus can also lead to a lack of rootedness, a tendency to make promises they can't keep because they've already mentally moved on to the next adventure, and an avoidance of the mundane responsibilities that ground the more earth-bound signs. Their gift is their ability to inspire hope and a sense of possibility in everyone they meet. Their lesson is to learn that the most profound journeys can sometimes be inward, and that true freedom includes the discipline to fully commit to a path and see it through to its meaningful conclusion. Leaving behind the boundless optimism of Sagittarius, our journey through the zodiac now takes a decisive turn toward structure, responsibility, and the long, arduous climb to the summit of achievement with Capricorn, the sea goat. This is a sign whose very symbol seems like a paradox, a creature with the head and forelegs of a mountain goat, tirelessly scaling the highest peaks, fused with the tail of a fish, swimming in the deepest emotional and primordial waters. To understand this unique hybrid, we must return to the wisdom of the Babylonians, who saw in these stars a figure of immense cultural significance, Suher. Mash, the goat fish. This was not merely a fanciful creature, it was a direct representation of their great god E, known later as Enki, the deity of wisdom, magic, and the fresh, life-giving waters of the Abzu, the subterranean ocean believed to exist beneath the earth. Enki was the master of the fundamental order of the universe, the god who bestowed civilization, arts, and crafts upon humanity. The goat fish symbolized his dominion over both the earth and the watery abyss, embodying the union of practical, climbing ambition with deep, intuitive wisdom. This ancient connection grounds Capricorn in themes of profound responsibility, the application of knowledge to build enduring structures, and a deep, often hidden, connection to the source of all life and tradition. When the Greeks encountered this Babylonian goat fish, they adapted its essence into their own mythological framework, though the core meaning of ambition and tenacity remained powerfully intact. The most prominent Greek myth associated with Capricorn is the story of the Amalthean goat. During the epic war between the gods and the Titans, the infant Zeus was hidden away on the island of Crete to protect him from his father, Cronus, who devoured his children. There he was nursed by a magical she-goat named Amalthea. In one version of the tale, the young Zeus, playing with the goat, accidentally broke off one of her horns. Filled with remorse, he blessed the horn, turning it into the cornucopia, the horn of plenty, which would forever provide its owner with whatever nourishment they desired. In gratitude for her care and sustenance, Zeus later placed Amalthea's image among the stars as the constellation Capricorn. This myth beautifully illustrates the Capricorn archetype. It is the story of a nurturing provider whose own sacrifice and patience become the foundation for ultimate power and abundance. Amalthea's horn, the cornucopia, represents the tangible, lasting results that come from disciplined effort and responsible stewardship, a core Capricorn drive. The creature's hybrid form, climbing from the sea to the mountain peak, symbolizes the Capricorn journey from the depths of potential to the pinnacle of tangible, worldly success. a climb that requires both emotional depth and unyielding determination. The planet that governs this entire arduous process of building and achieving is Saturn, the Roman god of time, limits, structure, and consequence. In astrology, Saturn is known as the great teacher, the taskmaster who presents challenges not to punish, but to instill discipline, maturity, and integrity. Its influence on Capricorn is absolute and defining. Saturn provides the unwavering focus, the patience, and the profound understanding that anything of lasting value requires time, effort, and often sacrifice. Those born under this sign carry an innate awareness of the passage of time and a powerful drive to build a legacy that will endure long after they are gone. They are the architects, the CEOs, and the historians of the zodiac, blessed with a natural talent for organization, strategy, and long-term planning. The shadow side of this Saturnian rule can be a tendency toward pessimism, rigidity, and an over-identification with their work and social status, leading to workaholism and a fear of failure that can be paralyzing. Yet, at its most evolved, Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, understands that true mastery is not about climbing over others to reach the top, but about building a structure so sound and ethical that it provides stability and opportunity for everyone within it. It is the ambition to serve a purpose greater than oneself. This tangible, enduring nature is cemented by Capricorn's elemental association, Earth. As the third and final Earth sign, Capricorn represents the cardinal or initiating expression of this element. If Taurus is the fertile soil and Virgo is the cultivated field, then Capricorn is the mountain itself, the ancient, enduring, and seemingly unshakable structure that defines the landscape. Cardinal Earth is Earth that initiates structure. It is the foundation stone of a cathedral, the blueprint for a city, the very bones of society. This elemental force gives Capricorns their legendary resilience, their unwavering ambition, and their deep respect for tradition and hierarchy. They are not content to simply possess or refine the material world like their Earth sign cousins. They are driven to build something upon it that will stand the test of time. Their strength lies in their perseverance, their reliability, and their ability to handle immense responsibility with grace and competence. However, this profound connection to structure can also lead to a fear of emotional vulnerability, a resistance to spontaneous joy, and a sometimes overly conservative or cautious approach to life. Their gift is their ability to manifest dreams into concrete reality. Their lesson is to learn that the climb to the summit is only meaningful if they allow themselves to feel the joy of the journey and the beauty of the view from every step along the way. From the lofty, structured peaks of Capricorn, we now ascend into the rarefied air of innovation, community, and radical thought with Aquarius, the water-bearer. This sign marks a dramatic shift from the focus on the individual self and its achievements to a vision that encompasses the collective, the future, and the betterment of all humanity. Its symbol, a figure pouring forth water, is one of the most misunderstood in the zodiac, for this is not water in an emotional sense, but the water of life, of knowledge, and of spiritual sustenance for the world. The roots of this figure run deep into Mesopotamian soil, where the Babylonians knew this constellation as Ju-la, the Great One, who was associated with their own god E, the very same deity linked to Capricorn. E, the god of wisdom and fresh water, was often depicted holding a vase from which two streams of water flowed, representing the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the twin sources of life for their entire civilization. The water-bearer was thus a divine benefactor, the one who brought the essential gifts of knowledge and civilization to humanity. This original role establishes Aquarius as a sign of profound humanitarianism, intellectual enlightenment, and the dissemination of ideas that elevate the entire community. The Greeks seamlessly integrated this concept into their own pantheon, identifying the water-bearer with the beautiful youth Ganymede. In the myth, Ganymede was a prince of Troy, renowned for his incredible beauty. Zeus, looking down from Olympus, was so captivated by the young man that he transformed into an eagle, swept down, and carried Ganymede up to the heavens to serve as the cupbearer to the gods. In this exalted position, Ganymede was granted immortality and the eternal duty of pouring nectar for the divine assembly. This story reframes the act of pouring from a terrestrial to a celestial one. Ganymede is not just providing water for a city, but serving the gods themselves, suggesting that the Aquarian mind operates on a plane of high ideals and universal principles. The myth infuses the sign with themes of being chosen for a unique, often unconventional, role that separates one from the ordinary human experience in order to serve a higher purpose. It speaks to the Aquarian destiny of being a conduit for revolutionary ideas that may seem strange or otherworldly at first, but are ultimately meant to nourish and advance the collective consciousness. The modern astrological understanding of this revolutionary energy is defined by its dual planetary rulership, a dynamic that creates a fascinating tension within the Aquarian psyche. The traditional ruler of Aquarius is Saturn, the same planet that governs Capricorn. This connection provides Aquarius with its structural backbone, its commitment to building lasting systems, and its disciplined, albeit unconventional, intellect. Saturn gives Aquarius the patience and focus to work tirelessly for its futuristic visions. However, the discovery of Uranus in the modern era led to its assignment as the contemporary ruler of Aquarius. Uranus, named for the primordial Greek god of the sky, is the planet of sudden awakening, rebellion, innovation, and revolution. It is the cosmic lightning bolt that shatters old structures to make way for the new.